Chapter 21:17. The old ancestor's face stiffened. Seeing this, Yi Fengyu was worried that the atmosphere would become stiff, so he immediately smiled and tried to smooth things over. Ancestor, elder sister is just worried about your health. So many things have happened today, ancestor must be tired. Elder sister just wants to finish talking so that you can rest. Old grandmadam stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking. His sinister and treacherous eyes were shrouded in a complicated and incomprehensible light. She gradually loosened her grip on her walking stick. After a long while, she let out a heavy sigh and fell back into her seat. Old Seventh, I know you are blaming me. Elder ancestor closed her eyes weakly. If I had known that you had no interest in Three Springs sect, I wouldn't have said such a thing in public. To spread the news that Yi Qingluo wasn't a descendant of the Yi family. It wasn't only Yi Qingluo's reputation that was ruined, it wasn't only the reputation of Yi Fengyu's mother. It was also the reputation of the entire Three Springs sect. After all, Yi Fengyu's mother had been dead for almost 10 years. She was also carrying the title of the mistress of the Yi family, Madame Yi. When Madame Yi was alive, she secretly had an affair with a mysterious man and gave birth to a baby girl. This made Three Springs sect become the laughingstock of the Nirvana realm. Moreover, old grandmadam wanted to make use of Yi Qingluo's current status in the Nirvana realm to boost Three Springs sect's prestige. This idea was no longer feasible now. Since the matter has already happened, no matter how much you repent, you will not be able to erase what you have done. Yi Qingluo's words were impolite, but her tone was extremely calm. Her tone was very calm. Ancestor, I'm sure you know why I came here. There's no need to say anything else. Just tell me the details of what happened back then. The elder ancestor's facial muscles trembled. His shriveled lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But when he met Yi Qingluo's calm and clear eyes, all the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. Old madam was deeply aware that she had let Yi Qingluo down. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, Three Springs sect would not only fall into the hands of an outer sect elder, more importantly, the Three Springs sect might really fall because of this. And she would personally destroy the eighth brother who was recognized by the Divine Emperor. Towards Yi Qingluo's attitude, the old ancestor didn't say anything in the end. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. He then looked towards Yi Qingluo, as he told her everything that he knew back then in full detail. Things were roughly the same as what he had learned during the succession ceremony. Old grandmadam then told Yi Qingluo in detail what had happened. Yi Tianquang had been working in other continents for several months and hadn't returned to the Three Springs sect. At that time, the Three Springs sect was managed by the elder ancestor. One day, when Madame Yuchi was accompanying her ancestor for a stroll in the garden, she found Madame Yi acting mysteriously in the rockery in the garden. Madame Yi was obviously more flustered after being exposed by the great ancestor. Under Madame Yuchi's vague guidance, the grand elder ancestor thought of the words, cheating on a man. However, after a thorough investigation, the elder ancestor did not find any traces of other men in the rockery, although this matter was left unsettled. However, a seed of doubt was planted in the heart of the old ancestor. Naturally, he began to pay more attention to Madame Yi. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. Chapter 21:18. Until 2 months before Yi Tianquang was about to return to the western continent, the elder ancestor discovered that Madame Yi's body was getting weaker and weaker, and she was retching from time to time. At first, he was able to appear at the family dinner at noon. However, after a long time, Madame Yi seemed to smell the delicacies on the table and began to vomit. In the end, he could only hide in his own courtyard, unable to go out. Madame Yuchi unintentionally mentioned that this was the same as when she was pregnant with Yi Qingqian and Yi Qingling. The grand elder, who had suspected that Madame Yi was having an affair, immediately felt that Madame Yi was pregnant with another man's child. The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was correct. However, Madame Yi's methods were too brilliant. Even if a doctor came, there was no way to accurately diagnose that Madame Yi was pregnant. But the more he couldn't find anything, the more he couldn't. The grand elder became even more suspicious. Elder ancestor thought that when Madame Yi's belly became bigger, nothing could be hidden anymore. Thus, after waiting for 2 months, Yi Tianquang returned to the Three Springs sect. During this period of time, old ancestor had been keeping an eye on Madame Yi, but he didn't find anything that could be used against her. She didn't see Madame Yi's belly getting bigger. After Yi Tianquang returned, The old ancestor wanted to find an opportunity to talk about this matter with his son, who knew that before she could find her son. He heard his son going to Madame Ye's courtyard. He didn't leave the courtyard until the afternoon of the second day. This infuriated the concubines of the other two branches. Madame Yuchi was especially enraged and immediately ran to the elder ancestor to fan the flames. The old ancestor had originally been suspicious of Madame Yi. When he heard that his own son had actually stayed in Madame Ye's courtyard for a whole day, he couldn't help but secretly curse Madame Yi as a vixen. While dragging his own son, he told Yi Tianquang his own guess. Yi Tianquang didn't really care. He knew very well whether his woman was pregnant or not. However, the Grand Elder insisted that Madame Yi was having an affair and that she was pregnant with a bastard. Yi Tianquang was helpless. He could only tell the old ancestor why he had come to Madame Ye's courtyard. After that, the old ancestor no longer asked about this matter. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Then came the news that Madame Yi was pregnant. The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more she felt that Madame Yi had schemed everything. She wanted to give Yi Tianquang the child she had slept with another man. However, Yi Tianquang had already specifically warned them. He stopped her from acting rashly. The old ancestor could only endure it. Sure enough, Madame Yi gave birth prematurely in less than 8 months of pregnancy. This time there was no need for Madame Yuchi to sow discord. The old ancestor couldn't believe Madame Yi. But after Yi Qingluo was born. However, news came that Yi Fengyu was in a critical condition and was on the verge of death. This news made the Grand Elder, who wanted to find Madame Yi to test her blood to prove her innocence, confused. Adultery and pregnancy were all her guesses. She couldn't find any evidence. Furthermore, Yi Tianquang had spent the night in Madame Ye's courtyard after returning, so he was very certain that Madame Yi wasn't pregnant. It was highly possible that the child would really be the legitimate son of the Yi family. If he didn't save them, what should they do after harming the legitimate son of the Yi clan? Especially since the divine emperor's mark had yet to appear on the other young masters and ladies. Then, after much consideration, the elder ancestor decided to use the forbidden technique to save the son of the Yi clan. Chapter 21:19. These are all that this old one knows. Everything that has happened. Recalling the past events, old Grandmadame's eyes were already hazy. Yi Fengyu took the soft silk handkerchief by the side and wiped old Grandmadame's eyes. It's all in the past, old Grandmadame. No matter if my sister is my biological sister or not, in my heart, she is my biological sister. His voice was very soft. However, the force in his words was sonorous and forceful, leaving no room for doubt. The great ancestor lightly patted the back of Yi Fengyu's hand, moved his hand away and lightly sighed. This old one is old, the future is the era of you young people. Now that this old one has seen your divine emperor's mark, I also believe in your ability. Saying that, old Grandmadame raised her head and looked at the young face in front of her, revealing a kind smile that she hadn't shown for a long time. Grandma said before, Grandma will not interfere with your decision. What she meant. Even if Yi Fengyu wanted Three Springs sect to become Yi Qingluo's solid backing in the future, she wouldn't say a word more. Yi Fengyu nodded hard. Grandma, don't worry, I will definitely make Three Springs sect flourish. Old Grandmadame smiled as she looked at Yi Qingluo. Old 7, although Grandmother had exposed your background in front of so many people today, but everything that you have done for Three Springs sect, Grandmother has seen it all. From today onwards, Grandma will not interfere with anything in Three Springs sect. You are still the 7th Missy of Three Springs sect, the number 7 in Grandma's heart. I only hope you don't blame Grandma and can help Grandma protect number 8. Needless to say, I will also protect little you. Yi Qingluo's tone was still indifferent. What you said earlier, I still have a few questions to ask in detail. Old Grandmadame had long expected that she would still have questions, so she nodded slowly. Ask away. You said, regarding your suspicion of my mother having an affair outside, it was because you and Madame Yuchi saw it together in the garden? Old Grandmadame was stunned and nodded, yes. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes. Then, after you sensed that my mother's situation was not right, as if she was having an affair, you investigated my mother. At that time, was Madame Yuchi by your side? Yes. When old Madame heard Yi Qingluo's question, her heart faintly seemed to have grasped something. Right, Madame Yuchi? She had always been by my side. The Yuchi clan, Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased slightly as she leaned against the soft chair. This Madame Yuchi hated her mother to the core. Her mother's death. It was definitely related to Madame Yuchi. Back then, mother was suspected by the old ancestor of having an affair with someone else. It must also be a trap set by the Yuchi clan. It was very likely the reason why her mother had chosen to have her and Yi Fengyu be born as a pair of twins. Madame Yuchi might know. She should be glad that she only wanted to make Madame Yuchi's life a living hell and did not kill her. He even fed Madame Yuchi a pill that would make her unable to breathe. As long as Madame Yuchi was still alive. It was a piece of cake to pry information out of her mouth. Yiqing Luo raised her head and asked again, "Then that year you always suspected that my mother was pregnant with someone else's child, and Yi Tianquang stayed in my mother's courtyard for such a long time? What did Yi Tianquang say to you, that made you accept my mother?" Old Grand Madame's expression stiffened. Looking at Yiqing Luo's expression, his gaze seemed to be dodging. Chapter 21-20. Old Grand Madame's eyes kept dodging, not daring to look at Yiqing Luo's eyes. After Yiqing Luo finished asking these words, the corners of her mouth raised into a bright smile again. Her enchanting eyes were curved, long and charming. "Old Grand Madame, you can choose not to say what happened in the past." Her voice was still as calm as ever, as if nothing could move her in the slightest. "Then, what you want I can also choose, to turn them all into ashes." Old Grand Madame's dodging eyes stopped, her old eyes suddenly widened, looking at her in shock as if she didn't believe her words. What Old Grand Madame hoped for was that Three Springs sect could be safe. The current patriarch of Three Springs sect was Yi Fengyu. How could Yiqing Luo be willing to let Yi Fengyu's Three Springs sect be destroyed? "You know, little Yu is very obedient to me." Yiqing Luo smiled, smiling disapprovingly. "Without Three Springs sect I can still give him Four Springs sect, Five Springs sect." Her voice paused, her smile became more and more brilliant. "If you don't believe me you can try." Old Grand Madame's face was completely livid. On her old face there was a dark cloud. Compared to Yiqing Luo's smiling face, it formed a sharp contrast. Old Grand Madame's fingers clasped tightly on the walking stick. She suppressed the anger in her heart. He kept brainwashing himself in his heart. Today was different from the past. Old Eight's future, the future of Three Springs sect, must be supported by Yiqing Luo. Even for Three Springs sect, for Old Eight. Whatever Yiqing Luo wanted to know, she must tell Yiqing Luo. Old Grand Madame suppressed the anger in her heart, staring at Yiqing Luo, answering word by word. "In your mother's hands there is something that Tianquang wants." Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows. She had some guesses about this point. If it wasn't for the fact that her mother held something that Yi Tianquang wanted, or some secret. And this thing, it was not only beneficial to Yi Tianquang. It was also beneficial to Three Springs sect. Otherwise Old Grand Madame would not be so easily convinced. Otherwise Yi Tianquang would not exchange the position of young patriarch. Yiqing Luo half squinted her eyes and asked with a smile, "What is it?" "I don't know what it is exactly." Elder Ancestor shook her head. "Tianquang did not tell me too much about it. He only told me that this thing concerns the future of Three Springs sect." Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly. Clearly he did not believe it. The old ancestor frowned. "Since I promised you that I would tell you what I know, it is naturally true." "Really?" Yiqing Luo continued to raise her brows and smiled. That smile caused annoyance to rise up in the old ancestor's heart for some reason. Old ancestor leaned on his walking stick and slammed it heavily on the ground. He simply let go and said directly, "Tianquang married your mother because he wanted that thing on her body. But your mother was always on guard against Tianquang. Even after they got married she didn't hand that thing over to Tianquang. Back then, when Tianquang returned from another continent, he went to your mother's courtyard because your mother used that item to lure him to her courtyard." "Old Eighth, it's your mother. She used that item to trade for it." When these words were spoken, not only Yiqing Luo's expression changed. Yi Fengyu's complexion suddenly turned pale. Father married mother just for one thing? And he was also exchanged for that thing by his mother? Yiqing Luo's heart was also shocked. What was the thing that Yi Tianquang had been thinking about for so long? Even after they got married, her mother didn't give that thing to Yi Tianquang. Chapter 21-21. But why did mother use that thing to beg Yi Tianquang for a child? Could it be that mother had a reason to need a child at that time? Once she thought of her family, they were born from the same family. Yiqing Luo's mind suddenly had a very bold idea. Mother begged Yi Tianquang for a child, was it for her? This thought made Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly beat extremely fast. She clenched her fingers and asked, "Mother wanted a child and Yi Tianquang gave it, but the thing? Mother still didn't give it to Yi Tianquang?" "Because Because of what happened to you. Old grandmadam closed her eyes. Because you are not of the Yi family's bloodline. Tian Kuang wanted to kill you. It was your mother who stopped Tian Kuang and used that thing to threaten him. So, I was able to become the young matriarch for so many years. It was all because my mother used that thing to exchange for it? In this way all the previous doubts made sense. Old grandmadam nodded. Yes, Tian Kuang promised your mother that the position of young matriarch will be kept for you until the day you reach marriageable age. As long as you live until then, that thing will automatically return to Tian Kuang's hands. Live until marriageable age, Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes. This body was 15 years old this year, just reached marriageable age. And she, at this time, because the original owner of this body died, she took over this body. In other words, because this year this body reached marriageable age. Therefore Yi Tian Kuang allowed Yi Qing Chen and Yi Qing Ling to plot to destroy her. Dig out the profound jade heart. Destroy her innocence. Attempt to take her life. Then, now that I have reached marriageable age, is that thing already in Yi Tian Kuang's hands? Yiqing Luo asked. Yiqing Luo couldn't distinguish this problem now. Yi Tian Kuang should have obtained that thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted against her and let his two daughters use this kind of cruel method to take her life when she was 15 years old. But, if Yi Tian Kuang really obtained that thing he had schemed for most of his life. With Yi Tian Kuang's temperament, he should have announced it long ago and made everyone know so that everyone would admire him. Moreover, this was equivalent to having something to protect his life. How could he have been killed by Yi Fengru? How could he have been stripped of his position as sect master? No. Old grandmadam looked at Yiqing Luo and it wasn't hard to tell that in her tone, there was some suppressed anger. This anger was for Madame Yi. Your mother has lied to all of us. From the beginning to the end, she had never thought of handing that thing over to Chen Kuang. She's just using that thing to fool the Yi family. The old ancestor leaned back in the soft chair. The old voice trembled with anger. There's no such thing. You've reached the marriageable age, but that thing still hasn't appeared. And your mother died a long time ago. She's dead. No one knows where she hid that thing. She was angry but also upset. Madame Ye's death was caused by her and Madame Yuqi. She let Madame Yi die. It was because he could not bear to see Madame Yi use that thing to threaten Tian Kuang time and again. He was also completely sure that after Yiqing Luo reached the age of 15, she would definitely get that item. But in the end, he didn't expect this kind of ending. Old grandmadam's old eyes suddenly opened wide. He stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Chapter 21-22. Old grandmadam seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stood up. Her hand that was holding the walking stick tightened and trembled. Her eyes widened and the expression on her face kept changing. Yiqing Luo, you and your mother deliberately teamed up to make fun of the Yi family? No wonder old grandmadam thought so. Yi Tian Kuang had never told old grandmadam what he was after. He only knew that with that thing, Three Springs sect would have the hope to become the leader of the 4 major sections. That thing was extremely important. Otherwise, Yi Tian Kuang wouldn't have spent most of his life trying to get that thing from Madame Yi. In the beginning, all the agreement was to wait until Yiqing Luo reached marriageable age. And after Yiqing Luo reached marriageable age, Yiqing Luo had undergone earth-shaking changes. In just a few months' time. From a waste with no ability to cultivate to a sky mystic supremacy. And her whole person seemed to have changed into another person. This was very likely, it was not caused by the Overlord. But, Madame Yi gave that thing to Yiqing Luo. Therefore Yiqing Luo advanced by leaps and bounds. The more she thought so, the more old grandmadam's heart trembled. She was also more and more determined in her own thoughts. Old grandmadam. Yi Fengyu was the first to react and hurriedly hugged old grandmadam's arm. Sister can't be that kind of person, mother can't be that kind of person either. Although Yi Fengyu was still young when his mother died. But Yi Fengyu remembered very clearly. His mother, for him and his sister, even if she was humiliated in the Yi family, she never made a sound. His mother. Even if she wore tattered clothes, lived in a shabby place, suffered from those servants and other concubines' insults. But his mother was still so noble and elegant, clean and pure, without the slightest bit of resentment. His mother would never go through so much trouble to scheme against his father and the Yi clan. Old grandmadam's body weight was mostly on Yi Fengyu. Old grandmadam's eyes flashed with hazy tears. Her voice was so tight that it was hard to spit out from her throat. Yiqing Luo, did your mother give that thing to you? No. Yiqing Luo shook her head and replied calmly, I was only 5 years old when my mother died. No, that's not right. If she didn't give it to you, how could she have let that thing? She gave it to you. The old ancestor shook his head in panic. That item was Yi Tianquang's obsession. Now it had become the obsession of the old ancestor. That item sounds very powerful. If I had obtained that item long ago, I wouldn't have given you the opportunity to bully me for 15 years. Yi Qingluo's voice was still calm, without any fluctuation of emotions. The old ancestor was stunned. His stiff body finally fell back onto the soft chair. Fortunately, Yi Fengyu had been supporting the old ancestor, preventing the old ancestor from falling due to his weak body. For a moment, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. After some time, old grandmadam slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yi Qingluo tiredly as she sighed heavily. Forget it, forget it. The past matters are all in the past. No matter if that thing had disappeared from this world along with your mother, or if it has already landed in your hands, it has nothing to do with the Yi family. Chapter 21-23. After Yi Fengyu sent old grandmadam back to the courtyard, Yi Qingluo had already left the main hall. Looking at the empty main hall, his mind recalled the conversation between old grandmadam and Yi Qingluo earlier. He shut his eyes heavily. He was the child that his mother used that thing to exchange for. What was the purpose of his birth? Numerous thoughts, like fried dough twist, intertwined together in his mind. He almost couldn't breathe as he was entangled. His hands, which were hanging by the side of his body, slowly clenched into fists. The muscles on his entire body at this moment formed into distinct lines. Suddenly he opened his eyes. No, he had to ask his sister clearly. Otherwise, his heart would not be at peace. Yi Qingluo was walking quickly towards her own courtyard. From old grandmadam's words, she could almost guess what was the thing that old grandmadam was talking about. But she had to confirm at once. After confirming, she then went over to Madame Yuchi's side. Asked clearly, what secret did Madame Yuchi discover that year on her mother? Which made Madame Yuchi to make old grandmadam misunderstand that her mother was outside, having an illicit relationship. Yi Qingluo had just walked into her own courtyard when Zhang San and Zhang Si suddenly ran over in a fluster. Seventh miss. Bad news. Bad news. Yi Qingluo's footsteps halted as she turned her head to look behind her. Seventh miss, Madame Yuchi. Madame Yuchi has been killed. Zhang San panted heavily, his expression unsightly as he said, this subordinate knows that Madame Yuchi is still useful to seventh miss, so she locked Madame Yuchi in her courtyard. Tonight, this subordinate and Zhang Si will watch over Madame Yuchi's dean together, but, Zhang San turned his head away in shame with a look that he found it hard to speak. Zhang Si gritted his teeth. When we were on night watch, we saw a figure scuttling into Madame Yuchi's courtyard, so I immediately chased after it. But when I followed the aura and chased to the warehouse, there was no trace of that figure. And then, we heard a miserable shriek from Madame Yuchi's room. When we rushed over to Madame Yuchi's room, Zhang Si lowered his head as he clenched his fists tightly. Madame Yuchi was killed with one stab and there were no traces of the murderer at the scene. Yi Qingluo frowned slightly. Madame Yuchi died just like that? Moreover, he was killed under the watch of Zhang San and Zhang Si? She was very clear about Zhang San and Zhang Si's strength. They were the two leaders of the Three Springs Sect's guards. Their profound grades were all around the 7th grade of the Earth Profound Realm. Trying to kill someone right under their noses without leaving any traces behind? Could it be the people from the Godless Island again? Moreover, there could be more than one murderer. One should know that the warehouse and Madame Yuchi's bedroom were in the north and south respectively. Although it was just a courtyard, it wasn't too big. However, walking back and forth would take at least half an incense stick's time. Zhang San and Zhang Si chased him to the warehouse to search for the killer's scent. Then he heard screams coming from the bedroom. It only took a few breaths. There was no way he could do it alone. Take me there. Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips tightly as she walked towards the direction of Madame Weiqi's courtyard with a gloomy expression. She was just about to look for Madame Yuchi and ask about what happened back then. Madame Yuchi died. How could there be such a coincidence? The murderer killed Madame Yuchi, no matter what his motive was. Chapter 21-24. He walked to the gate of Madame Yuchi's yard. The guards who had already formed a circle greeted respectfully when they saw Yi Qingluo, 7th Mississippi, after Yi Fengyu inherited the Three Springs sect. Yi Qingluo was no longer the young matriarch of the Three Springs sect. Even if Yi Qingluo wasn't a descendant of the Yi family, These three Spring Sex guards and servants had treated Yi Qing Luo as the Yi family's seventh miss from the bottom of their hearts. How is it? Yi Qing Luo took quick steps forward and entered the courtyard. Have you found any clues? The guards followed behind her and looked at each other. They lowered their heads and said apologetically, "We're sorry, Miss Seven. We've searched the entire courtyard and didn't find any traces left behind by the murderer." After Zhang San and Zhang Si sensed Madame Yuqi's death, they immediately left. He immediately sealed off the courtyard and arranged for the guards to thoroughly investigate the courtyard. In such a short period of time, the murderer should not have had the chance to leave the courtyard. But, not a single hair of the murderer could be found in any corner of the courtyard. Either that or the murderer was still in the yard. Or the murderer's speed was so fast that he could come and go without a trace. Yi Qing Luo followed Zhang San and Zhang Si to Madame Yuqi's bedroom. Before she even got close, Yi Qing Luo could smell a thick stench of blood. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Zhang San pushed open the door and said in a low voice, "After bringing Madame Yuqi back to the courtyard, her body started to fester. If it wasn't for seventh young lady's pills that kept her alive, she would have died long ago." In other words, the stench of blood did not only come from the cut on Madame Yuqi's neck, but also from the wounds all over her body. Madame Yuqi was indeed miserable. On her body, there is almost not a piece of intact, almost. She was lying on the bed with a knife wound on her neck. Blood was still gushing out. Her eyes were wide open, filled with fear and unwillingness. The room was filled with the stench of rotten meat and blood. When the guards behind him saw the festering, bloody corpses, and the stench filling the air, they couldn't help but shudder in fear. They all felt nauseous. Some of the maids who followed along to join in the fun directly leaned against the wall and vomited. However, their seventh miss, with a straight face, wandered around the room. Even when his gaze was fixed on the corpse, his eyes did not blink and his expression was calm. This courage, this determination. One had to know that seventh miss was only a 15-year-old girl. Those who didn't know better would think that their seventh young mistress was a murderous demon who spent her days on piles of corpses. Yi Qing Luo wandered around the room but didn't find any useful clues. It was indeed as Zhang San and Zhang Si had said. Other than the knife mark on Madame Yuqi's neck, the murderer did not leave any other marks that belonged to him. What was the murderer's motive? Madame Yuqi had now become neither human nor ghost. Whether she lived or died, it didn't seem to affect anyone. Moreover, it was obvious that Madame Yuqi would not live for long. Why did the murderer have to kill Madame Yuqi at this time? He knew that she wanted to ask Madame Yuqi about what happened in the past. Did he want to stop her from finding out what happened back then? Or did he have other motives? Yi Qing Luo was in deep thoughts. Her ears suddenly twitched and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her enchanting eyes, which were scanning the surroundings, slowly retracted and looked at the people behind her. "You can leave first. Send someone to watch over each courtyard. If there's any situation, inform me immediately," Yi Qing Luo said calmly. Chapter 21-25. Yi Qing Luo looked at Zhang San and Zhang Si as well as the rest of the servants. "All of you leave first, especially the two of you. Go to Matriarch's courtyard to guard and ensure Matriarch's safety." Zhang San and Zhang Si looked at each other. "Seventh miss, we will leave one of us to accompany you." "No need." Yi Qing Luo shook her head. "Even if you're here, you're not the murderer's opponent and will drag me down instead." Zhang San and Zhang Si. Although this was the truth, but there was no need to say it out so directly. The two of them decisively led the bunch of servants out. There was only Yi Qing Luo left in the entire house. Yi Qing Luo didn't stay in the house. She lifted her feet and walked out of Madame Yuqi's bedroom. She released her perception and sensed that the guards and servants were already in Madame Yuqi's courtyard. Yi Qing Luo lightly curled her lips as she raised her head and fixed her gaze on a spot in the dark starry sky. "Since you're here, why not show yourself directly?" The wind blew, swirling Yi Qing Luo's fine black hair. The young lady was dressed in red with jet black hair, a stunning beauty. Against the reflection of the fire in the courtyard, as though she was shrouded in a layer of light, she looked like a pure and holy nine heavens fairy, like a dream. There was no response from the air. Yi Qing Luo wasn't in a hurry. She maintained the posture of looking up at the starry sky. The expression on her face was tranquil and elegant. After a long time, she moved her pink lips and yawned tiredly. "If you're not willing to show yourself, then I'll go back." In the middle of the night, she didn't have the energy to accompany that lunatic to admire the moon. She'd rather go back and sleep to replenish the energy she had used today. Yi Qing Luo finished her words and turned around to leave. She had just turned around when a hurricane struck her from behind. Yi Qing Luo didn't avoid it. That hurricane had no murderous intent or vicious intent. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she turned her head back. Finally willing to show yourself? Behind her, the man in the hurricane was surrounded by layers of airflow. The man was dressed in a crimson luxurious robe, under the agitation of the hurricane, was like a jumping flame. His figure was outstanding and he was handsome. The red robe on his body did not reveal any demonic aura, but instead, it made the man's entire body emitted a dense coldness. That innate aura was so strong that it made people want to submit. The most eye-catching part of him was his eyes, which were filled with coldness. It was clearly bottomless, as deep as the sea. There seemed to be countless whirlpools within, attracting one's soul. However, his eyes were covered with a layer of coldness, so that when people see him, she subconsciously lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Even if it was Yi Qing Luo, she was also frozen by the frost beneath his eyes. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she looked at him. Zhu Wuxen, long time no see. The person that had arrived was precisely Zhu Wuxin. After parting ways in the flame lair, she had not seen Zhu Wuxin again. Who would have thought that he would actually come to the West Continent and come to the Three Springs sect to find her? Zhu Wuxen stared at Yi Qing Luo, as though he was trying to find a trace of fluctuation from her face. However, he was still disappointed in the end. The expression on Yi Qing Luo's face had a faint smile, and the gaze she used to look at him was calm and distant. You knew I was here. Zhu Wuxian used a declarative sentence. Yi Qing Luo's reaction apparently showed that she had long guessed that the person in the dark was him. No, it's just that I smelled a familiar plum fragrance earlier. This isn't the winter season. The only person who can have such a unique feeling is you alone. Chapter 21-26. Zhu Wuxin's black eyes were fixed on her. All of a sudden, his thin lips curled into a frivolous smile, which made him look even more evil and cold. What? Now that you and Di Zun are in a loving relationship, you can't bear to see me, who used to have a relationship with you? Yi Qing Luo's face sunk. The one who had a relationship with you is not me. Not you. Zhu Wuxen slowly walked towards Yi Qing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. Yi Qing Luo struggled and wanted to retreat. But Zhu Wuxin's strength was too great. The more he struggled, the tighter he gripped. What do you want to do? Yi Qing Luo frowned and simply stopped struggling. Zhu Wuxin pulled open her sleeve, revealing half of her arm. How do you explain the birthmark here? Zhu Wuxin's cold voice was right next to her ear. It was like an icy hand that was seeping into her heart through her eardrums. Yi Qing Luo shuddered as she speedily retracted her hand. This time Zhu Wuxin did not force her. Yi Qing Luo successfully retracted her hand as she pulled down her sleeves. Zhu Wuxen, what are you trying to prove? Zhu Wuxian's smile did not diminish, but the coldness in his eyes was frightening. Only you have this birthmark. Yi Qing Luo. If you're not her, then there's only one possibility. Zhu Wuxin suddenly lowered his voice, and there was a thick sense of treachery in his words. You have been possessed by a ninja. Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled as her body froze. Zhu Wuxen slowly straightened his body as his icy cold piercing eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Then I will use all means to recover my original body, to snatch my Qing Luo back. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as her slender brows knitted into a bundle. She absolutely believed that Zhu Wuxin was serious. If Zhu Wuxian confirmed that she wasn't the original Yi Qing Luo, she would be determined to be the one who possessed her body. Possession, as the name suggested, was to borrow someone else's body to reincarnate. Zhu Wuxian wanted to restore the original Yi Qing Luo to her original self. That would also mean that he had to chase her out from Yi Qing Luo's body. As for Zhu Wuxin, since he would say such a thing, this also meant that Zhu Wuxin had already investigated and made preparations in this aspect. As long as he was certain that she wasn't the real Yi Qing Luo, Zhu Wuxin would make a move on her. This lunatic. Yi Qing Luo secretly gritted her teeth. She really didn't know how the previous Yi Qing Luo, who was so delicate and weak, had provoked this lunatic. Yi Qing Luo. You are the only woman that I have feelings for. I will not let you go. Zhu Wuxen looked at Yi Qing Luo's changing expression as his lips twitched coldly. Yi Qing Luo, you can't escape. The man's icy cold gaze made Yi Qing Luo extremely disgusted. Her eyes flickered slightly as she took a few steps back and raised her head to look at him. Zhu Wuxen, whether you let go or not has nothing to do with me. If you insist on using such a ridiculous method to make yourself comfortable, To prove that the Yiqing Luo in your mind still exists, then up to you. Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes stared at her without blinking. The dense murderous aura seemed to want to engulf her. However, even after a long time, Zhu Wuxin did not make a move. Only that bone-piercing chill didn't dissipate for a long time. Yiqing Luo, long time no see. Let me give you a present. After half an incense stick of silence, Chu Wuxen suddenly opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she silently wondered what tricks Zhu Wuxen was playing. Following that, she saw Zhu Wuxen throwing a lump of something towards her. Chapter 21-27. It was a woman's voice. Give her a woman as a gift? Normal people really couldn't keep up with a madman's train of thought. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and looked at the sack by her feet. She lifted her leg and kicked it. The person in the sack struggled violently. Looking at Yiqing Luo's bored look, Zhu Wuxen's gaze turned colder. Yiqing Luo, I will come and look for you again, you are my. After Zhu Wuxen finished his words, he didn't bother about Yiqing Luo's reaction. He turned around and leaped onto the wall. Zhu Wuxin. Yiqing Luo suddenly spoke out. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps halted. Her crimson robe looked extremely beautiful under the night sky. I'll tell you one last time, you're the only one who's lost in the past. Yiqing Luo's chilly voice had no emotions at all. You and I when we were young totally didn't know what love is. Marrying when you say you want to, marrying when you want. A marriage without any feelings can't be taken seriously. Zhu Wuxin's back was very straight. He did not look back. An ice-cold voice faintly sounded, but I took it seriously. Just as Chu Wuxin finished speaking, a voice came from outside the courtyard. Elder sister. Yi Fengyu hurriedly rushed over, and when he saw Yiqing Luo standing at the entrance of the courtyard, he quickly jogged over. His gaze was fixed on the red-clothed man standing on the wall facing the wind. Startled, he widened his eyes. My savior. Zhu Wuxin glanced sideways at Yi Fengyu. Without replying to Yi Fengyu, his figure flashed, and he turned into an afterimage, disappearing into the night. Savior, don't go. Yi Fengyu rushed forward, trying to make him stay. However, Zhu Wuxin was too fast. Yi Fengyu helplessly stood in the corner, looking in the direction in which Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. Yiqing Luo was puzzled and walked to his side. Savior? Are you talking about him? Yi Fengyu hurriedly turned back. Sister, when Yiqing Qian joined forces with the dark forces to invade Three Springs sect, it was him, he was the one who saved me and Lingya. The person who saved Yi Fengyu was actually Zhu Wuxen. She owed Zhu Wuxin another favor. Sister, do you know him? Did he come especially to find you? Yi Fengyu looked in the direction that Zhu Wuxen had left, his face full of excitement. Yiqing Luo shook her head. He was just passing by and sent something over. Yi Fengyu's face was full of excitement. Big sister, if we meet again you must bring me along. I want to properly thank him. If it wasn't for him this time, I definitely wouldn't have made it. Yes. Yiqing Luo rubbed Yi Fengyu's head as she was still feeling bewildered. Zhu Wuxen, who looked like an ice cube, how could he possibly specially save Yi Fengyu and Ziling from Three Springs sect? Could it be Zhu Wuxin did it for her? He knew that she cared about these two people very much. So he specially saved them from Yiqing Qian's hands and specially threw them to the Mu brothers? Suddenly, a woman's groan came from the gunny sack that was struggling on the ground, interrupting the conversation between the siblings. Yiqing Luo lifted her leg and kicked the sack, raising her eyebrows. Xiaoyu, open the sack and see what's inside. Yi Fengyu squatted down and opened the gunny sack. Under Yiqing Luo's instructions, he pinched the bottom of the gunny sack and threw the person inside, head first onto the ground. A dong sound was heard. A slender lady dropped out from the gunny sack. The lady's head crashed heavily onto the ground. Chapter 21-28. The lady was dressed in a jade green long dress and her clothes were in a mess. Her hair was like a chicken's nest, extremely messy as it covered her face. Moreover, her body was stained with blood and her entire body was filled with horrifying wounds. No matter how one looked at her, she was in a sorry state. After the lady fell onto the ground, she rolled around in pain. Blood seeped out from her forehead, causing her disheveled hair to stick into a ball. Sister, this is... Yi Fengyu was shocked by the lady as he retreated a few steps towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo half narrowed her eyes as she sized up the lady who was lying on the ground. Her lips curled slightly as she snorted coldly. Zhu Wuxen's gift is indeed a good one. The favor that I owe him, seems like I can't repay it off. Yi Fengyu looked at Yiqing Luo in a daze, not understanding the meaning behind her words. Yiqing Luo patted his head as she slowly walked towards the lady who was struggling and rolling on the ground. She looked down at that lady from a high position. "Miss Feng, long time no see." The lady's struggling and rolling action instantly came to a halt. Suddenly, the lady abruptly raised her head, and through that messy hair, Yiqing Luo could clearly see a pair of murderous eyes. "Whoa! Whoa! 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 Whoa!" The lady cried out angrily. Her body was fluctuating along with her emotions as it kept shaking. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she totally didn't mind the lady's irritable emotions. She was still looking down from a high position, as though the lady was an ant beneath her feet. She smiled as her slender fingers caressed her lower jaw. "Miss Feng is really pitiful. You were once so high up, but now you have fallen into such a state. I wonder how Ah Xian would feel if he saw you in such a state." She mentioned the two words, "Ah Xian." The lady's resentment and viciousness became more and more obvious. The lady's struggles became more and more intense. The lady's cries became more and more anxious and furious. However, Yiqing Luo stooped down again as she tilted her head and gave a chilly smile. I've forgotten that the only woman who can see my Ah Xian is only me. Even if you're in such a disheveled state, my Ah Xian wouldn't have any feelings at all." Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yiqing Luo. But the woman's eyes widened and her cries became even more ferocious. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and brushed aside the lady's hair which was covering her face in disgust. The woman's face was reflected in his eyes. Yi Fengyu pointed at the woman in shock. Fengling? Wasn't this woman the granddaughter of the Imperial Palace's granny, the one who was now wanted by the headquarters and the entire Nirvana realm was chasing after her? It was actually her. Yiqing Luo pulled out the smelly cloth from Fengling's mouth. "Yiqing Luo, you slut. Let go of me. Let me go." As soon as Fengling could speak, she started cursing. She no longer had the fairy-like temperament that she had in the past. Fengling hated Yiqing Luo. He hated Yiqing Luo so much that he couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. Yiqing Luo had snatched away her most beloved brother Di. Yiqing Luo had caused her to turn from the high and mighty Fengling into a wanted criminal. Now, no matter where she went, they had to hide and not appear in front of everyone. She was like a gloomy mouse. All these were thanks to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo half squatted down. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a bloodthirsty smile. "Fengling, Madame Yuqi. You killed her, am I right?" Chapter 21-29. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. Fengling really hated her. Seeing that she didn't want to kill Madame Yuqi, he thought that she didn't want Madame Yuqi to die. So in order to target her, he killed Madame Yuqi? How ridiculous. If she didn't want Fengling to die, was Fengling going to commit suicide to target her? Yiqing Luo really couldn't understand this dumb woman's train of thought. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly, "Then I should thank you for helping me settle my enemy, and even protecting my reputation." Wind Chimes gritted her teeth and roared, You're using me?" Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. "Who asked you to be so stupid? Madame Yuqi is after all the Yi family's second concubine. If I were to kill her, wouldn't I bear the infamy of killing an elder? This assassination of yours has actually resolved the problem in my heart." Fengling was so angry that her whole body trembled. She raised her hand and pointed fiercely at Yiqing Luo as she bellowed furiously, "Yiqing Luo, aren't you trying to force me to meet you on my own accord by asking the headquarters to issue a wanted order? I'm telling you, you'll never be able to obtain the Heart Tranquility Pearl." Yiqing Luo smiled. "Do you think you still have the right to speak now?" Yiqing Luo smiled and walked closer to Fengling. Fengling was frightened and wanted to retreat. However, the injuries all over her body left her without any strength. He could only look at Yiqing Luo with an aghast expression, as she closed in step by step. "Zhu Wuxing gave you to me as a gift. Do you think that you still have a chance to escape?" Yiqing Luo lifted her chin and gave a look of disdain. Fengling, actually I admire you. You actually hid for so long and didn't come to see me and even made yourself into such a state." Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she smiled brilliantly. "You used to be so bright and beautiful, but now you're covered in a stench. Bitch. You slut." Fengling stomped her feet in anger, frantically trying to shake off Yiqing Luo's hand. Fengling was infuriated. Yiqing Luo's words had poked the most painful part of her heart. Her features were malevolent as she crazily opened her mouth, trying to bite Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo suddenly released her lower jaw. Feng Ling had used too much strength. Without Yi Qingluo's support, he fell onto the ground and fell flat on his face. The bleeding on his forehead, which he had just managed to stop with great difficulty, broke his skin again. Feng Ling grimaced in pain and her eyes were filled with hatred. Yi Qingluo straightened her body and stepped on the back of Feng Ling's hand, which was propped up on the ground. She bent over and narrowed her eyes, which reflected a cold light. "Miss Feng, you know very well that in my heart you can't even be considered as trash. If it wasn't for the fact that you have something that I want, I wouldn't even need to talk so much nonsense with you." Yi Qingluo laughed softly. "I'm someone who doesn't like trouble. Either you give me the thing obediently or I'll kill you and find the tranquil bead." If it wasn't for the little bit of relationship between Dmo Xian and the Imperial Palace's old granny, she would have killed Feng Ling long ago. This Feng Ling had repeatedly played tricks behind her back to create trouble for her. The last time at the Dark Forces main camp, this woman even dared to make use of Dmo Xian to agitate her and even hurt her. If not for the profound Heart Jade's protective consciousness, she probably wouldn't be able to hang on. "Bitch. Kill me if you have the ability. I'll see how you're going to find the tranquil bead after you kill me." Feng Ling sneered without a single bit of fear. "Did you think that I would be so silly to keep the tranquil bead on me? If you kill me, the whereabouts of the tranquil bead will forever be a secret." Chapter 2130. Yi Qingluo stepped on the back of Feng Ling's hand with increasing force. That ravishing face was blooming with a brilliant smile. As though the person who was stepping on Feng Ling's hand wasn't her. "What? You can't bear to do it?" Feng Ling stared at her mockingly. "You know the importance of the Tranquility Pearl to you, so you don't dare to kill me, afraid that you can't get it, right?" As she said that, she laughed to herself. The expression on her face was filled with viciousness and madness. "Yi Qingluo, I've said this before, if you want to get the Tranquility Pearl, exchange it with Brother D. As long as you return Brother D to me, this Tranquility Pearl is yours." Feng Ling's sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo. "Miss Feng, you're a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm. In this world, other than your grandmother, there's absolutely no one else who would help you." Yi Qingluo bent down and the force she used to step on Feng Ling's hand increased. Feng Ling grimaced in pain, but she didn't want to lose to Yi Qingluo, so she didn't make a sound. Yi Qingluo pretended not to notice Feng Ling's pain as her lips curled up and the weight of her body pressed down on her feet. She smiled lightly. "Because of this, you won't believe anyone and you won't believe that any place is absolutely safe. Tranquility Pearl. Such an important thing used to threaten me, how could you not bring it with you?" You." Yi Qingluo smiled as she shook her head and interrupted Feng Ling. "Feng Ling, don't be in a hurry to deny it. I'm too confident in my own conjecture and can't wait to verify whether my conjecture is right or not." Her words paused as the smile on her lips became treacherous and bloodthirsty. "Why don't I kill you now and turn over your internal organs, even your profound jade heart and heart, to see if I can find the Tranquility Pearl?" When she finished her words, the smile enlarged in Feng Ling's eyes. "Feng Ling, are you interested in helping me to test my conjecture?" Feng Ling even forgot to cry out in pain as her eyes widened in disbelief, her eyes filled with shock. Feng Ling's face was filled with shock as her petite body trembled uncontrollably. The gaze she used to look at Yi Qingluo was filled with fear. This kind of woman. This kind of deranged, cruel and bloodthirsty monster. Why, did Brother D like her? Apart from the fact that her face could also seduce men. What was so good about her? She was a monster. Windling's pupils shrank and her breathing quickened. Feng Ling knew Yi Qingluo's character. Yi Qingluo said she wanted to rummage through her internal organs, then she must be serious. Fear, the emotion of fear, continued to spread in his heart. Windling shrank back in fear. He did not care about the scars all over his body. Calming Pearl? I'll give you the calming pearl?" Feng Ling's terrified voice trembled. "But, you have to promise me that you'll let me leave safely. I've always hated trouble." Yi Qingluo touched her chin and shook her head decisively. Windchime's pupils shrank even more. I promise I won't cause trouble for you. Let me go. He looked at the woman who was begging him. On Yi Qingluo's face, there wasn't the slightest bit of change. Windchime's promise could not be trusted. But, thinking of Dmo Xian, thinking of the scene of him and the Imperial Palace's old granny going against each other, she finally closed her eyes as she heaved a long sigh and said, "Take out the calming pearl." Windling's eyes lit up with joy as she immediately flipped her palm and placed it on her forehead. A burst of profound energy spread out from Windling's palm. Chapter 2131. Yiqing Luo smirked as she raised her eyebrows and stared at Feng Ling's forehead. Feng Ling had actually hidden the tranquility bead in her own mental energy. As expected of a world spiritist, his spirit power was so powerful. It was her. There was absolutely no way for her to hide things in her mental power. She did not have such a strong spiritual power. Her spiritual power couldn't handle anything else. After Feng Ling took out the calming bead, she was so weak that she seemed to have no strength at all. She spread out her palm towards Yiqing Luo, set heart pearl. Yiqing Luo's finger moved slightly. The gourd flame fan unfurled and drew out a profound wave. The tranquil pearl immediately fell into Yiqing Luo's palm. Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped as she pinched the crystal-clear little bead and looked at it carefully. The tranquility bead was extremely cold. It was like a small piece of ice covering her palm. I've already given you the item now. Can I leave? Feng Ling used all her strength to growl. Her malevolent face and vicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Yes? You want to go back on your word? Feng Ling's face was filled with terror. Yiqing Luo, you promised me. Yiqing Luo maintained her enigmatic smile and didn't say a word. In reality, he was already calling out to Old Man Song in his heart, inquiring about the authenticity of this heart-calming bead. Yiqing Luo placed the tranquility pearl on the cherry blossom pattern on her arm. Old Man Song sensed it and said with certainty, this heart-calming bead is real, and it doesn't hide any other power. The last time when Yiqing Luo was schemed against by the dark forces, she placed the profound heart jade which contained profound yin qi into her body. Old Man Song used 120% of his attention to examine anything that came from the outside. Deeply afraid that the situation of Yiqing Luo being controlled by Lao AI would happen once again. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. At least wind chimes knew her place. Her gaze swept past Feng Ling, who was curled up on the ground and shivering. Feng Ling met her gaze and cried out anxiously, Yiqing Luo, I've already given you the calming orb. I won't bother you or Brother D anymore. I just want to live. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. The cry for help was trembling. She kept choking with sobs. Windling continued to cry and beg for mercy. Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop Feng Ling from making any noise. All right, you may leave. Sister. Yi Feng Yu frowned in disapproval. Letting Feng Ling go was definitely not a good thing for his sister. Yiqing Luo shook her head at him. Yi Feng Yu could only purse his lips and say no more. When Feng Ling heard this, her eyes lit up and she was wild with joy. Really? Then I'm leaving. Windling got up from the ground in a hurry. Her body was riddled with scars and she couldn't muster any strength at all. But the thought that Yiqing Luo was still looking at her. Feng Ling gritted her teeth and took a deep breath, concentrating all of her profound energy on her feet. Then he flew out of the Three Springs sect residence at lightning speed. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the horizon. Feng Ling, who had just used her breath to rush up the wall, flew back and crashed heavily into Madame Yuchi's bedroom. Feng Ling screamed in pain. His entire body was nearly smashed into pieces by this fall. Yiqing Luo, you, how dare you lie to me? Feng Ling was so angry that she gritted her teeth, her facial features were sinister as she stared in front. But the moment she opened her eyes, she met with a pair of eyes that were filled with disbelief and hatred. And blood, dripping onto her face. Chapter 2132. The tentacle was a sticky substance. It was blood. It was also a hand of rotten flesh. Feng Ling was unable to suppress the fear in her heart as she screamed in terror. What she pushed earlier was Madame Yuchi's corpse. It was Madame Yuchi's corpse. Feng Ling's smash earlier had accurately smashed onto Madame Yuchi's bed. Madame Yuchi's festering skin, coupled with the knife wound on her throat, was extremely horrifying. This scene almost drove Feng Ling crazy. Her hands were filled with fresh blood and Madame Yuchi's rotten flesh. Feng Ling only felt her stomach churning. Yiqing Luo, who was standing at the door, got a shock. She looked at Feng Ling, who was screaming crazily on Madame Yuchi's bed. She looked at the direction of the energy which attacked Feng Ling earlier. Before she had time to think deeply, an extremely familiar scent of sandalwood assaulted his nostrils. Instantly, it filled Yiqing Luo's nose. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly widened, overflowing with uncontrollable joy. Her waist was tightly wrapped by a strong and powerful arm, as though it wanted to merge into her body, hugging her tightly. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's heart, was thumping wildly. It was Xian. Her Xian was back. The man's elegant sandalwood scent, and the man's hormone scent, surrounded Yi Qingluo's body. His deep hoarse voice like a mellow wine, sweet and charming. Lil Luo, I missed you. Just a few simple words, made Yi Qingluo's heart soften suddenly. Her arms wrapped around his waist tightly, rubbing her little face on his chest. I missed you too. Thinking about it, they were only separated for a few days. But in just a few days they already missed each other to the bone. Why are you back? Have you settled the Imperial Palace's matter? Yi Qingluo raised her head, gazing deeply at the man in front of her. After not seeing him for a long time, he was still that peerless, dignified and noble. His forehead was still dripping with a thin layer of sweat. A few strands of black hair, scattered in front of his forehead, stuck by the sweat. It added a trace of evil charm to his beauty. Diamo Xian lowered his head, kissing her hard on her lips, settled. His kiss wasn't considered gentle, but it made her body tremble as if she had been electrocuted. Her little hands unconsciously clenched the front of Diamo Xian's clothes. Miss him. Miss her. This kiss conveyed the longing of the two people. Then wind chimes' furious shouts came from Madame Yuchi's room. Big Brother D. Brother D, it's you. The two of them kissed each other until they couldn't separate from each other. Diamo Xian greedily stared at the charming face in front of him, as if inviting him to continue. His body tensed up. A ball of nameless flame surged towards the direction where he was squeezed 3 inches down. How could Yi Qingluo not understand the yearning in the man's eyes? She rolled her eyes and pushed Diamo Xian away. This beast was really thinking about that matter all the time. Stop fooling around. Fengling is still there. She was not that hardcore to do a live broadcast in front of others. Diamo Xian gave her another 2 ferocious pecks before releasing her. Then he shifted his gaze to the woman in the room. It was just a momentary change. Diamo Xian's gaze was cold. The flame on his entire body at this moment was like an ice mountain covering him. Fengling's heart was in pain. All of a sudden she thought of a sentence. Her big brother D wasn't warm. It was just that the person he wanted to be warm to was not her. Her lips trembled slightly and after some time she found her voice. Brother D, earlier it was you who stopped me. Chapter 2133. As long as Diamo Xian said no, she would believe him unconditionally. Fengling's hopeful gaze stared unblinkingly at Diamo Xian. His face was so handsome that it took her breath away. She couldn't hide her love for him. His face moved her heart. Any factors that could harm Lil Luo must be eliminated. Diamo Xian said indifferently. This answer also admitted that the person who attacked Fengling just now was him. Diamo Xian hugged Yi Qingluo as he looked at Fengling calmly, without a single trace of emotion in his eyes. Fengling, this lord has said this before, this lord has put up with it on account of Grandma's face, but time and time again you want to put Lil Luo to death. He paused and enunciated each word icily. So, anything that threatens Lil Luo that hurts Lil Luo this lord will personally shatter. Fengling's face instantly turned as pale as paper. She widened her eyes in disbelief, tears gushing out of her eyes as she shook her head frantically. I don't believe it. Brother D, I don't believe it. You're my brother D. Brother D wouldn't want my life for another woman. Diamo Xian looked at the tearful Fengling indifferently. He did not show the slightest bit of emotion. Fengling, I'll hang your head at the entrance of the Wind Emperor Palace. After Fengling and Imperial Palace's old granny made a move on Yi Qingluo time and time again. In the Imperial Palace, Granny and Winshim took advantage of his absence to disperse most of the Imperial Palace's forces and built their own palace, establishing the Wind Imperial Palace. Their friendship had long since been severed. Fengling stared at Diamo Xian in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Yi Qingluo, whom she viewed as her enemy, let her off. Brother D, whom she regarded as her lover and who was loyal to her, wanted to kill her. How ironic was this? Fengling's despairing gaze did not evoke a trace of sympathy or pity from Diamo Xian. Diamo Xian glanced sideways, the flames on his body and the contours of his face had softened. His thin lips curled up as he said warmly, Lil Luo, wait for me at the door. It will be done in a while. Yi Qingluo grabbed Diamo Xian's sleeve. Ah Xian, no? She knew that Diamo Xian was doing all this for her. However, she valued Diamo Xian. Just like how Diamo Xian valued her and was willing to go against his own elders for her. She did not wish for Diamo Xian to make a decision that he would regret in the future. Lil Luo, wait for me obediently. Dmo Xian bowed his head, sealing her words. When his lips parted from hers, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Madame Yuchi's door suddenly closed. Before her eyes, Dmo Xian's figure had already disappeared. Yi Qing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she bit her lower lip lightly, looking at the tightly shut door. She sighed softly. Xian was really going to give up the past. If it was her. Could she give up everything for Xian? Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Even she herself was unable to answer this question. Xian really loved her. To be able to meet and fall in love with Xian in this life was her greatest fortune. In the room, Windling was still begging for mercy. With a sobbing tone, she expressed her feelings towards Dmo Xian. But it was still unable to stop Dmo Xian's advance. Windling's heart was like dead ashes as her hatred and jealousy towards Yi Qing Luo soared at this instance. Brother D, don't tell me. Don't tell me you really have the heart to do this to little Ling? Don't tell me you really don't care about Grandma's feelings? Windling sobbed softly. Chapter 2134. Dmo Xian looked at Feng Ling calmly. There wasn't a trace of emotion in his deep obsidian black eyes. That was a whirlpool covered with frost. Even if one was sucked in, they would die without a burial ground, but it still made one want to sink into the brilliance. Feng Ling's heart felt as though it was gripped tightly by a cold hand. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Tears rolled down from the corner of her eyes. Her pitiful look couldn't move the man in front of her. After a few breaths, Dmo Xian walked to the bedside. Feng Ling looked at him with love and hate. Her pale lips were trembling. She clutched the blanket tightly. She didn't care that the blanket was covered with Madame Yuchi's blood. Feng Ling understood Dmo Xian's character very well. No one could change the things that Dmo Xian had decided on. If Dmo Xian wanted to kill her, in that case he would really kill her. Feng Ling raised her head and looked at the godlike man. Her lips trembled as she asked, Brother D, before I die, I only want to know one thing. From the beginning to the end, did you ever have a place for Shaoling in your heart? Dmo Xian stopped in his tracks. His icy cold gaze swept past Feng Ling's face emotionlessly. His thin lips moved slightly as he said word by word, never. Feng Ling's pupils contracted as she laughed bitterly. Tears blurred her eyes. She shut her eyes in despair as she laughed bitterly. You? Kill me. To die in Brother D's hands, it's considered fulfilling one of my dreams. Dmo Xian raised his hand as profound energy gathered in his palm. In his heart, the only thing that could stay was Yi Qing Luo. You could say that he was heartless or cold-hearted. He would never exert a shred of affection on unimportant people. Feng Ling could clearly sense that powerful profound energy. Her tears started to flow more violently. She thought that she would show weakness and show her feelings like this. On account of their past relationship, Dmo Xian would at least spare her life. But, she said so much, but it still couldn't make Dmo Xian waver. Was his heart really made of stone? Feng Ling really wanted to dig out his heart to see how hard his heart was. The surging profound energy came crashing down. Wind Chime's heart leaped into her throat. He wanted to resist, but he was powerless. He could only close his eyes and wait for death to come. Suddenly, Feng Ling did not feel the tearing pain that she had been waiting for. Instead, she felt her body lighten. She was dragged into an embrace by some unknown force. Feng Ling opened her eyes in delight. Brother D, before he could finish, the smile on Windling's face froze. Little Ling. The old voice was extremely dignified. His sinister, wrinkled face was filled with anger. Feng Ling's heart skipped a beat. Tears kept gushing out. She suddenly leaned forward and cried bitterly, Grandma, Grandma. The anger on the Imperial Palace's grandma's face finally subsided after hearing her granddaughter's cries. She lifted her withered hand and gently patted Feng Ling's back. She blamed her granddaughter for getting herself into such a state for a man. But at the same time he felt sorry for his granddaughter. Listening to Feng Ling's cries, the heart of the Imperial Palace's granny also tightened. The Imperial Palace's granny clenched her teeth as she raised her sinister cold eyes and stared at the man in front of her. Dmo Xian's palm strike earlier landed on thin air. The entire bed was blasted into smithereens. It could be seen that Dmo Xian's palm strike earlier was totally merciless. He really wanted to kill Feng Ling. Dmo Xian. Chapter 2135. Dmo Xian's deep eyes were cold and stern. Grandma, long time no see. Do you still have me in your heart? The Imperial Palace's grandma was furious. Diamo Xian looked at her calmly. This lord has yet to congratulate grandma for becoming the Wind Emperor's grandma and taking charge of your own Wind Emperor Palace. You. Granny of the Imperial Palace. No, she should be called Granny Wind Empress now. Granny Feng Di stared fiercely at Diamo Xian as the fury in her heart made her eyes red. Diamo Xian, Granny has protected you for so many years, I'd not expected that. For a woman you actually treat Granny like this. Good. Grandma has raised an ingrate. Granny Wind Emperor's chi and blood surged. After shouting this he couldn't help but cough violently. Diamo Xian remained expressionless. There was not a trace of emotion in his eyes. Xian. Outside the door Yiqing Luo heard the commotion in the house. He also heard his grandmother's furious curses. Yiqing Luo immediately pushed open the door and rushed in. As expected, he saw Granny Wind Emperor carrying Feng Ling in her arms, standing face to face with Diamo Xian. Little vixen, how dare you appear in front of me? The minute Granny Wind Emperor saw Yiqing Luo, all the suppressed anger in her chest exploded at this instance. Granny Wind Emperor let out a furious roar. Around Granny Wind Emperor's body, countless surging and thick profound energies surged. One after another, it blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it slammed down towards Yiqing Luo's direction. How dare you? Diamo Xian's eyes turned cold as he rebuked in a low voice. The purple sleeves were like rolling clouds, stirring up all the surrounding air currents. Bang bang bang. A deafening collision sound rang out. Madame Yuchi's bedroom was blasted apart by the two powerful dark forces. Yiqing Luo's delicate body was brought into Diamo Xian's embrace. He waved his sleeve again. The profound energy released by Granny Wind Monarch was easily suppressed. Granny Wind Emperor dodged in time, so she wasn't hurt by her own profound energy. Diamo Xian. Granny Wind Emperor's face was gloomy, her malicious eyes were filled with a biting cold sharpness. Diamo Xian shielded Yiqing Luo behind him. The frost on his face was so thick that ice shards could fall off. That pair of deep ink-like eyes were dark and gloomy, and they were bone-chilling. It was as if his eyes had just swept past them. He would fall into an endless ice cellar. Even Granny Wind Emperor couldn't help but feel shocked. The last time in the blazing flame nest, Diamo Xian had already shown mercy. But that time, even if she had shown mercy, she could clearly feel the disparity between her and Diamo Xian. What she relied on? It was just that Diamo Xian had once been taken care of by her in Nirvana realm for a few months. Diamo Xian didn't care about this. Then, Granny Wind Emperor shivered and did not dare to continue thinking about it. With this lord around, whoever dares to lay a hand on little Luo, will be making an enemy out of this lord. Diamo Xian looked at Granny Wind Emperor coldly. His icy cold gaze was extremely oppressive. Granny Wind Emperor's face turned pale. She hugged Feng Ling tightly. Her eyes flashed and she suddenly stepped back. Then his figure flashed and he was about to leave. Diamo Xian's eyes turned sharp as he gave off a burst of murderous aura. Trying to hurt little Luo and still dare to run? He let go of Yiqing Luo and the wind under his feet chased after her. His palm wind was about to land on Granny Wind Emperor, blocking the both of them. Suddenly, a burst of powerful black energy descended from the sky, blocking in front of Granny Wind Emperor. Diamo Xian's palm landed on that black energy. Immediately following that, an indistinct, unreal figure appeared in that ball of black energy. Chapter 2136. The moment that shadow appeared. Granny Wind Monarch carried Feng Ling as she took the opportunity to escape. Diamo Xian wanted to chase after her but was entangled by that ball of black energy once again. Diamo Xian's brows creased tightly as he looked at the direction where Granny Wind Monarch's figure disappeared. He waved his sleeves impatiently as he split apart the black energy. This time, the black energy didn't continue to tangle with Diamo Xian. Instead, it gathered towards the direction of that blurry shadow in the void. The more it gathered, the fainter that shadow became. Diamo Xian's expression instantly sunk. This thing, why did it feel like? Could it be? Diamo Xian's heart suddenly tightened. Nirvana realm looked like it was getting more and more chaotic. Did the people from the upper realm really think that God realm no longer existed? The black energy slowly dissipated in midair. Along with that blurry shadow, it also disappeared. Yiqing Luo looked at the direction where that shadow disappeared in shock as she felt extremely astonished. There was actually something that could block Diamo Xian's palm. Furthermore, it was able to tangle with Diamo Xian and successfully escape. That thing, what on earth was it? And that shadow. What on earth was it? Yiqing Luo was filled with puzzlement as she looked at Diamo Xian. She instantly threw it to the back of her mind. Side profile kill. Because of the battle between Diamo Xian and Granny Wind Monarch as well as that black energy. The pitch-black sky kept on flashing with lightning tearing a huge hole. Lightning lit up as it shone on Diamo Xian. That tall and straight figure, his purple luxurious robe seemed to be plated with a layer of light. It showed his nobility and elegance. Perhaps Diamo Xian was deep in thought, that peerless handsome face, his side profile was extremely cold, giving off a suffocating sense of oppression. Tightly pursed thin lips, the lip lines were alluring as though inviting her to come forward to have a taste. Hence, Yiqing Luo's mind was filled with a man's charms. He had no moral principles. He had no bottom line. In front of a beauty, everything could be thrown away. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo rushed forward and hugged Diamo Xian's waist. Oh, my man is so handsome, so handsome. The young lady's sweet voice was filled with love and possessiveness. Successfully pleasing Diamo Xian. He turned around and wrapped an arm around her soft body. Yiqing Luo cooperated as her arms circled around his neck, her charming eyes sparkling. Tiptoeing, Yiqing Luo's pink lips pressed onto Diamo Xian's. She kissed him on the lips and sucked on his lips like how he usually did to her. That sentence, "You hurt Lil Luo, and you still want to run," was enough to make Sue explode. After Yiqing Luo sucked on it, she moved her head away and leaned towards his shoulder. Oh, my maiden's heart has swelled up. Ah Xian, how can you be so handsome? The other party was Granny Wind Empress. Diamo Xian had repeatedly laid his hands on Granny Wind Emperor for her. This is also using action to show. In the future, when she met Granny Wind Emperor and her granddaughter again, she didn't need to show any mercy at all. Ever since the founding of the Wind Emperor Palace, the so-called friendship between them had long since vanished into thin air. This man, the way he was always thinking about her was so handsome. Since I'm so handsome, would you be satisfied with just a kiss? Diamo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he looked at the young lady's sparkling adoring gaze. His heart became extremely soft. He suppressed his magnetic voice as he panted with a trace of emotion. Lil Luo, just a kiss, are you really satisfied? He circled Yiqing Luo's waist tightly as his large palm directly clasped onto the back of Yiqing Luo's head. Chapter 2137. The young lady's face was flushed red, like a budding flower. The same tender, sparkling red lips seemed to be tempting to approach. The man's scorching temperature scorched Yiqing Luo's body. Her eyelashes fluttered as she realized something, trying to break free from his hand and avert her gaze. But the man's strength was too strong. How could she break free? The back of her head was firmly fixed in the man's broad palm. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. The man's pheromones enveloped her in an overwhelming manner. Yiqing Luo's fingers unconsciously curled up, clutching the collar in front of his chest. Her delicate body softly fell into Diamo Xian's arms. You torturous little demoness, you only know how to seduce me. Yiqing Luo bit her lips, staring at him. Only when this man's gaze locked onto her. Her entire body went soft, panting heavily, her heart beating rapidly. This man was really poisonous. He was a demoness who made her want but not able. I'm only seducing you. Diamo Xian's large palm held her face. Following that, he kissed her deeply. His actions were gentle, bit by bit, guiding her to respond. A soft peace licked open her trembling pink lips. His low hoarse voice bewitchingly came from her lips. Lil Luo, is there anything important tomorrow? Yiqing Luo was unable to control her tender panting and moaning. Hearing Diamo Xian's words, Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled violently. How could she not understand the meaning of his words? Her fingers tightened again as her charming eyes were filled with a layer of mist, revealing a hint of wetness. Evildoer. Stinky evildoer. Lil Luo, if you don't answer, it means that you've tacitly agreed. There's nothing tomorrow, Diamo Xian laughed softly beside her ear. His slightly trembling body, an extremely hard texture, rubbed against her petite body. Right now she was already ignited by the man. She was extremely sensitive and could feel the toughness of his body. Especially the man's ending tone, the last completely made her body limp and powerless. She forcefully held on as her fingers grabbed his clothes tightly, raising her misty eyes, staring at him. On her lips was his saliva. Diamo Xian, you're dead meat tonight. She forcefully pulled his body towards her. Go back to my room. Dmo Xian's deep inky eyes flickered with a red gleam. Two thin lips kissed her forcefully. His hands encircled her tightly. Yiqing Luo only felt a cold breeze on her cheek. Before he could react, her body was already pressed down to the ground. It was a soft bed and a familiar scent. This is her room. Looking at the peerless face on his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. Yiqing Luo's fingers tugged hard as she forcefully kissed his lips. See how I deal with you. The next day, when Yiqing Luo woke up, it was already noon. She felt sore all over and stretched lazily. He struggled to get up from the bedding. The next moment, her body, along with the bedding, was encircled into the man's warm embrace. Little Luo, good morning? A man's hoarse voice rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo lazily closed her eyes and leaned her weight on the man. Ah Xian, it's all your fault, I'm almost drained by you. Dmo Xian laughed out loud. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were flowing with amorous ripples. He whispered, yes, it's my fault. So as punishment, I have to help you wash up and change your clothes. Xiao Yu and the rest are waiting for you. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly opened. That's right. She had forgotten. Xiao Yu had just inherited the position of Three Springs Sect's patriarch yesterday. Three Springs Sect had to be reorganized once again. And Yi Fengru's matter had yet to be confirmed. Chapter 2138. By the time Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian reached the main hall, it was already 1 hour later. Stepping into the hall, Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings of the hall. Yi Fengyu was sitting in the main seat. Behind Yi Fengyu stood Yi Fengru, who was dressed in a simple yet elegant robe. His head was lowered and his thoughts were blank. Ziling stood beside him. The lower seats on the right side of the hall were occupied by the sect elders. He did not see the figure of the old ancestor. When the two of them entered, Yi Fengyu stood up and wanted to welcome them. Before he could walk down from the main seat, he saw Yiqing Luo leaning lazily on Dmo Xian's shoulder, yawning as she walked to the soft chair by the side to sit down. Yi Fengyu halted his steps. Although he was still young with the status of the Yi family, he had long known about this matter. Even if you haven't eaten pork, you've seen a pig run. In the past, the students in the academy were all only 13 or 14 years old, and they all had several servant girls who served as servants. After such a long time, Yi Fengyu more or less understood some things. Seeing Yiqing Luo in this state appearing in the main hall, everyone knew what had happened last night. Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo and sat down on the two-seater soft chair. Yi Fengyu then regained his senses and hurriedly stood up to greet Dmo Xian brother-in-law. The others also stood up and bowed towards Dmo Xian. We pay our respects to the overlord. Yi Fengyu's voice overlapped with everyone else's. When the sect's elders saw Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian walking hand in hand into the main hall, his heart leapt up to his throat. When she heard how Yi Fengyu addressed Dmo Xian, his old face instantly turned pale. Dizun brother-in-law? Brother-in-law? The overlord? And Yiqing Luo? What kind of relationship? Although, he had heard that the overlord had spent the night in Yiqing Luo's courtyard. He had also heard that Yi Fengyu had asked Ziling to summon Yiqing Luo several times, but was always blocked by the overlord. A man and a woman alone in a room at night. The next day the woman fell into a deep sleep. As someone who had lived for hundreds of years, how could he not guess what had happened last night? But, in the hearts of the sect elders, Dizun was high and mighty. He was a legendary figure. Compared to Yiqing Luo, that kind of 15-year-old yellow-haired little lass who hadn't even fully grown her hair at most. She could only play around. After all, Yiqing Luo's face was indeed a source of calamity. He also had the capital to bring calamity to the country and the people. However, when she heard Yi Fengyu call her brother-in-law, she felt a chill run down her spine. The elders of the sect panicked. We're all a family, no need for formalities. Dmo Xian said indifferently. Yi Fengyu's lips curled into a smile. He returned to his seat and sat down again. His face was filled with joy from seeing his sister and brother-in-law's good relationship. Big sister, actually, after knowing that brother-in-law has come, I didn't want to disturb you, but I've just inherited the position of sect master, and there are many things in the sect that haven't been resolved yet. The sect elders insisted that I consult you. In front of Yiqing Luo, Yi Fengyu behaved like a normal child. His eyes were filled with dependence towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo yawned lazily and casually swept a glance at the sweating sect elders. Since the sect elders have come out of seclusion, and little Yu is still young and inexperienced, The sect elders are the only elders of the sect, and the living signboard of Three Springs sect. Little Yu has just inherited the position. The sect elders should be helping him by the side, isn't it? Chapter 2139. Seventh Miss is right. I am the only elder of Three Springs sect. I have the obligation to help the patriarch grow. The sect elder replied while wiping his sweat with trepidation. Yiqing Luo nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Yi Fengru. Second young master, since you are standing here now, then I will take it as you have chosen the future you want. The man who was mentioned suddenly tensed up. He raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo. Yi Fengru, who had experienced many changes, was no longer the same as before. That handsome face that had always been gentle and refined had been replaced by a cold and expressionless face. His eyes were as calm as still water, as if there was no ripple in his heart. Only when he looked at Yiqing Luo, there was a trace of fluctuation in his eyes. Yiqing Luo lazily shifted her body and found a comfortable position in Dmo Xian's embrace. Immediately she picked up the teacup by the side. Yi Fengru, since you've already made your choice, I'll give you this chance. Steam curled up from the teacup. It made her beautiful face look hazy and mysterious. She took a sip of the tea. The fragrance was rich. She closed her eyes in satisfaction and continued, remember, you no longer have the next Baiming clan. I will use my life to save you. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly froze. The cold light eroded everything around. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and could clearly feel the chill coming from Yi Fengru. She raised her eyebrows and opened her eyes. Dmo Xian had taken away the teacup from her fingertips and put it back on the coffee table. His slender fingers grasped her hand. The warm interaction was not affected by Yi Fengru at all. Second brother. Yi Fengyu felt the atmosphere was oppressive and quickly turned to look at Yi Fengru, calling out with a smile. At the same time when Yi Fengyu called out, second brother, Yi Fengru's cold eyes blinked. In that instant, the cold light emanating from his body disappeared without a trace. All the arrogance was restrained. Yi Fengru clenched his hands and took a step back, standing behind Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengyu heaved a sigh of relief, raised a smile and looked at Yiqing Luo. Elder sister, second brother he? Yiqing Luo raised her hand and stopped his pleading. Yi Fengyu was close to Yiqing Luo and also revered her. Immediately, he lowered his head and did not dare to speak again. Yi Fengru. Yiqing Luo's sweet voice was devoid of any emotion. Yi Fengru clasped his hands together respectfully. I didn't mention the Baiming clan because I wanted to poke at your scars. Yiqing Luo sat up slightly and looked at him seriously. I only want to tell you one thing, Bei Mingshi used her own life to exchange for a chance for you to live on properly. If you really care about Bei Mingshi, then for her, along with her share, live on together. Yiqing Luo's expression turned serious as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Yi Fengru's pupils constricted, and the veins on his clenched fists bulged. Yiqing Luo replied calmly, if your current submission is because you secretly have some thoughts that you shouldn't have, then don't blame me for disregarding the Baiming clan's relationship and sending you down to meet the Baiming clan. After a pause, she lowered her voice and sounded a little ethereal. Don't waste the chance that the Baiming clan fought for you. Yi Fengru's body tensed up. The fists hanging by his sides were almost embedded deep into his bones. Yiqing Luo didn't speak again. Yi Fengru didn't give any response. The atmosphere in the entire hall seemed to have sunk into a low pressure. The few of them felt that even breathing had become difficult. Chapter 2140. After some time, Yi Fengru, who had been tensed up as though he was suppressing something, slowly moved. His body in that instance relaxed. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed past an undetectable smile. The next moment, Yi Fengru knelt down towards Yiqing Luo's direction. I will abide by my mother's dying wish to live for 7th Mississippi. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sonorous and filled with determination. A pair of eyes which had no desires, was still like water, making one unable to distinguish clearly. What he said, was it true or false? Yi Fengru looked at Yiqing Luo without blinking as he spat out every single word clearly. My mother said my future is to live for 7th Mississippi. But, by 7th Miss side there's the world group, devil class, and also from various continents, famous and promising experts, and... He paused as his gaze swept past Dmo Xian and back to Yiqing Luo. There's also the Overlord to protect you. You actually don't need my presence by your side. I know you value Sect Master very much, and also treat Sect Master as your own brother and dote on him. So, I choose to stay in Three Springs Sect to assist Sect Master. second brother? Yi Fengyu abruptly stood up as he bent over to support Yi Fengru. Yi Fengru shook his head as he looked at Yi Qingluo stubbornly. Seventh Miss can choose not to believe me, but I think me staying in Three Springs sect is the result you want. No. Yi Qingluo lightly curled her lips as her sleeves moved, an invisible airflow struck towards Yi Fengru's legs. Yi Fengru's body was lifted up as he slowly stood up. Yi Fengyu immediately supported him. I believe you. Yi Qingluo looked at Yi Fengru calmly. I can feel the relationship between you and your mother very clearly, and I believe that you will help me protect Xiaoyu for your mother. Yi Fengru's eyes lit up as though he couldn't believe that Yi Qingluo actually believed him. In his pupils, there seemed to be a dazzling luster faintly floating. His heart also calmed down. He bowed his waist towards Yi Qingluo's direction, and following that, he retreated back to his original position. Yi Fengyu looked at Yi Fengru's respectful demeanor, neither servile nor overbearing. His thin lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But Yi Qingluo opened her mouth and called out to him, "Little you, with Yi Fengru's help and the guidance of the sect's elders, the reorganization of Three Springs sect will not be a problem." Yes. Yi Fengyu nodded and looked at Yi Qingluo. But sister, if I inherit Three Springs sect, the Heavenly Academy, I will discuss this matter with the Academy. Master Guiyu is your master. If he is willing, he can come to Three Springs sect to personally guide you when the Academy has no classes. Yi Qingluo had considered this point before. A sect could not be without a leader for even a day. If Yi Fengyu went to the Black Academy for lessons, he could only come back for 3 days a month. Yi Fengyu's ability had improved rapidly in recent times. But his aptitude hasn't been completely activated yet, so he can't compare with the two brothers of the Mu family. Naturally, they couldn't be like the Mu brothers who could go to the academy whenever they wanted, and busy themselves at home whenever they wanted to be busy. The only way was, let Master Guiyu come to teach. Master Guiyu was only teaching the devil class. Long Yunzhan and the rest were watching over the devil class. If Master Guiyu was willing, he could spare 1 to 4 hours a day, and that would be enough. Chapter 2141. The matters in the West Continent have stabilized. The Heavenly Academy should be gathering the students to return soon. Yi Qingluo calculated the time. I will have a good talk with Master Guiyu. Yes. Yi Fengyu nodded excitedly. He was already very proud and happy to be the disciple of Master Guiyu. If Master Guiyu could give him special treatment, he would be so excited that he could fly to the sky. Yi Qingluo's body softened as she leaned back into Dmo Xian's arms. She glanced at the sect elder. With Yi Fengru and the elder around, there is no need to specially come to me for the Three Springs sect's matters. You can decide for yourselves. After all, it was a fact that she was not a member of the Yi family. If there were people from the Three Springs sect, she would handle it herself. She would try not to interfere if she could. People would always change. Even she would change according to the environment. The current Xiaoyu was full of trust and dependence on her. But most of the time she would not be by his side. No one knew what the future would bring. If she interfered too much in Three Springs sect's matters, in the future there would be people who would constantly brainwash Xiaoyu. Perhaps 1 person would wash, 2 people would wash, 3 people would wash. Xiaoyu would not believe it. But when 100 people, 1,000 people, or even 10,000 people stood in front of him, telling him that everything Yi Qingluo did was to get Three Springs sect, to use him to control Three Springs sect and so on and so forth, at that time, could Xiaoyu's heart still hold on? The future was unpredictable. The only thing she could do was to prevent all these from happening. She would try her best to ignore the Three Springs sect's matters. In the past few years, Yi Fengru had been the butler of the Yi family's backyard and was able to cultivate a group of his own forces without anyone noticing. It was enough to prove that Yi Fengru was courageous and intelligent. With Yi Fengru as his advisor, Yi Fengyu definitely wouldn't take too many detours. In addition, there was the sect elder, an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, a sky mystic overlord. If they wanted to attack the Three Springs sect while the successor to the throne was a young man, then they would have to be prepared to be annihilated. Today Dmo Xian showed his face. Even if the sect elders felt indignant, even so he had to swallow it. Is there anything else? Yi Qingluo smiled faintly. Yi Fengyu scratched the back of his head as he glanced at Dmo Xian and was about to open his mouth. Behind her, Ziling, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "Miss, you're leaving the Three Springs sect again, right?" Hearing the little lass's aggrieved voice, Yi Qingluo couldn't help but laugh. She looked at Ling and said with a smile, Ling, you have recovered well and your talent is not bad. If you cultivate well, you will definitely have your own world in the Nirvana realm in the future. But Ling only wants to stay by Miss' side. Linger's life was saved by young Miss, Linger's legs were healed by young Miss, and everything Ling has today was bestowed by young Miss. Ling wants to accompany young Miss, protect young Miss, protect young Miss. Ling's eyes were misty with tears, and her voice carried a hint of sobbing. Ever since Yiqing Luo could cultivate, the time she spent with Yiqing Luo was getting lesser and lesser. Especially after Yiqing Luo went to the Heavenly Academy. Yiqing Luo seemed to have forgotten about her. Now, young Miss had gone further and further away. Chapter 2142. Yiqing Luo looked at the weeping Ling. Yiqing Luo smiled helplessly. Ling, did you understand what Yi Fengru said just now? Ling blinked her tearful eyes and looked at Yiqing Luo blankly. What second young master said just now? He said there were too many powerful people around Mississippi. She didn't need someone like him around her. Even second young master wasn't qualified to stay by her side. Then, wouldn't she be even less qualified to follow Miss? Yiqing Luo looked at Ling's expression and became more and more depressed. Yiqing Luo knew that this girl was thinking the wrong way. She patted the hand that was playing with her hair around her waist. Diamo Xian let go of her obediently. She got up and walked to Ling. He raised his hand and gently caressed Ling's head. Silly Ling what I mean is, you should choose to stay in the Three Springs sect like Yi Fengru and protect little you for me. Linger understands? I understand. Ling's cheeks subconsciously blushed as she watched her Miss approach. Her eyes widened and almost greedily looked at Miss's beautiful face. She didn't know how long it had been since she saw Miss up close. As she got closer, the young Miss's charm, which made people submit to her, came pressing down on them in an overwhelming manner. Don't worry about me. If you want to repay me, then take good care of little you for me. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and deliberately got closer to Ling unexpectedly. Her flirting skills were quite good. She hadn't even flirted much. The little girl's face turned red. Just when Yiqing Luo was ready to continue to flirt with this girl, suddenly, a clear and cold voice called out quietly from behind him. Little Luo. Yiqing Luo felt a chill down her spine. She stood up straight. The hand that was around Ling's shoulder slowly moved down. Then step by step she stepped back. Bang. Her back was knocked into a hard embrace. Yiqing Luo hugged his arm and lowered her voice. Don't tell me you're jealous of a little girl? Diamo Xian lowered his head and leaned over her shoulder. What do you think? Alright, you're the prettiest. Who asked me to love beauties the most? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, turned around and threw herself into Diamo Xian's arms. Alright, if there's nothing else, carry me back to the room to catch up on my sleep, I'm so sleepy. Diamo Xian helplessly looked at the coquettish young lady in his arms, his eyes filled with indulgence. He wrapped his arms around the girl's waist and carefully lifted her up. Yiqing Luo's arms wrapped around his neck as she nestled in his arms and closed her eyes. Diamo Xian turned and walked towards the door. Wait. Brother-in-law, wait. Yi Fengyu hurriedly got up from his seat and rushed to Diamo Xian's side. Diamo Xian's footsteps halted as he turned around and looked at him. Yi Fengyu raised his head and coincidentally met with Diamo Xian's peach blossom eyes. Startled, he took a few steps back. Black eyes, black hair, a face of peerless elegance. Just by standing there quietly, he exuded a majestic aura. That domineering aura, that demonic charm was like a poppy, extremely dangerous but made people involuntarily sink into it. Even though he knew that Diamo Xian's brother-in-law was his brother-in-law. On account of his sister's face, he would never make a move against him. But in the face of such a powerful Diamo Xian, Yi Fengyu, this child would still feel fear. Chapter 2143. However, no matter how gentle Diamo Xian was, those who couldn't withstand his aura, nor could she feel his gentleness. Yi Fengyu fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva, took a deep breath and said in a trembling voice, That, brother-in-law, I have a question to ask you. When he finished his words, he seemed to be afraid that Diamo Xian would be angry and immediately pointed at Yiqing Luo. Regarding sister's matter, Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and grabbed Diamo Xian's face. Her little body shifted in his embrace and she propped herself up. In his arms, face to face with him. Her hands pinched both sides of Diamo Xian's cheeks as she tilted her head, revealing a brilliant smile. "Ah Xian, don't scare little you, give me a smile." Dmo Xian was rather helpless. He was already trying his best to suppress his aura. However, Yi Fengyu's mental fortitude was too weak. What could he do? He was also in despair. That brat Yi Fengyu, who was sitting on the main seat and looking at him, was still fine. Why was he behaving like this when he was right in front of him? Could it be that his future brother-in-law was deliberately making things difficult for him? He looked at his sister, who was constantly rubbing Di Zun's face with her hands. And Di Zun had a doting look on his face. Yi Fengyu felt like he had been fed a mouthful of dog food. Look at how much Di Zun's brother-in-law dotes on his sister. What was there to be afraid of? Di Zun's brother-in-law was obviously a henpecked husband. Therefore Yi Fengyu closed his eyes, steeled his heart, and roared out the words that he had been suppressing in his heart for a long time. "Brother-in-law Di Zun, when do you plan to become my real brother-in-law?" All was silent. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Yiqing Luo's hand, which was pinching Dmo Xian's face, froze. She looked at Yi Fengyu in shock, not understanding why he would ask such a question. Dmo Xian was stunned for a moment and lowered his eyes to look at the young lady in his arms. His answer depended on her attitude. But when he saw the shock in the young girl's eyes, it was as if she had never thought of this problem before. Dmo Xian's heart was indescribably upset. He tightened his arms and increased the strength of his arms. On the surface he still maintained a gentle smile. "Little you, why do you ask?" Yiqing Luo nodded her head repeatedly as she stared at him with wide eyes. Right. Why would he ask that? Was little you urging them to get married? Yi Fengyu watched the two of them respond to this question. The atmosphere was obviously strange. His little heart couldn't stop beating wildly. Did I ask the wrong question? Not waiting for Yi Fengyu to reply, Dmo Xian raised his brows. Dmo Xian replied with an N. Yi Fengyu was so shocked that he jumped back a few steps. I just wanted to ask you and my sister that your relationship is so close. My sister is a woman after all. After all, if she doesn't get married, her reputation? He stuttered and spoke incoherently. But Dmo Xian understood the meaning behind his words. Yiqing Luo's heart warmed. This brat was worried about her and concerned about her reputation. Although this place was a foreign world that had never appeared in history, it was still a foreign world. But it was still ancient times after all. Reputation was extremely important to a woman. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's relationship had been spread around the entire Nirvana realm. If the both of them didn't get married and this was spread out, Yiqing Luo would definitely be pointed at by others. Chapter 2144. Following Yi Fengyu's words. Yiqing Luo's heart involuntarily pounded along with the rhythm of Yi Fengyu's words. Instinctively, she raised her head and fixed her gaze on the man who was hugging her. From this angle, Yiqing Luo could clearly see Dmo Xian's expression. His rosy red lips were slightly raised, and his long and narrow peach blossom eyes were slightly raised. Clearly he was in a good mood. Yiqing Luo's little hand tightened on Dmo Xian's collar. He could feel the thundering heartbeat of the girl in his arms, and the hand that was grabbing his chest unconsciously curled up. Dmo Xian's lips curled up even more. Was his little Luo heir nervous? Previously, because Lil Luo had never thought of marrying him, the unhappiness he felt suddenly disappeared in that instant. His heart suddenly soared. He tightened his arms around the girl in his embrace. Her peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at Yi Fengyu. His deep brows were slightly raised. Di Zun, brother-in-law? Yi Fengyu was frightened by his gaze and stammered in a low voice. His heart was beating faster and faster, as if it was about to jump out of his throat. Clearly Di Zun's brother-in-law looked very gentle. She also didn't show any displeasure because of his forced marriage. But why did he feel weak at the knees when he looked into his brother-in-law's eyes? He wanted to escape from the range of his gaze. Little Yu wants this lord to marry little Luo'er? Dmo Xian's thin lips curled upwards, his voice gentle. However, the atmosphere in the hall was so stiff that it was difficult to breathe. Yi Fengyu's body stiffened and trembled slightly. Obviously under Dmo Xian's aura field, she couldn't even stand firm. But he still stubbornly stood his ground, trying his best to raise his head, to look at Dmo Xian. Ziling carefully hid behind Yi Fengyu and hugged his arm. She whispered, "Young master, miss and the overlord must have their own thoughts on this matter." We, Yi Fengyu shook his head at Ziling, his eyes filled with determination. "This concerns my sister's reputation and future. No matter what, I must get to the bottom of this." Looking at the determined look on his young master's face, Ziling had no choice but to shut her mouth. The sect elders at the side were so scared that their calves were trembling uncontrollably. He clasped his hands together and racked his brain, trying to think of a way to stop Yi Fengyu's forced marriage. Was this the new sect leader or the new ancestor? The overlord did not answer for a long time. Obviously, he had never thought of marrying Miss Qi. It was highly possible that the overlord was just messing around with Miss Qi. If the new sect master's forced marriage behavior angered Di Zun, what about the Three Springs sect? How could the new sect master be so blind? The few of them were perturbed. His heart was about to jump out of his chest. Diamo Xian folded his arms and lowered his eyes to look at the young lady who was staring at him in a daze. The infatuation in the young girl's eyes pleased Diamo Xian. The corner of his mouth unconsciously curled up. In that instant, his entire aura was softened. After a long while, Diamo Xian raised his eyes. His face was magnificent, and his eyebrows were thick and deep. His peach blossom eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Yi Fengyu's heart tightened. His hands that were clenched tightly by his sides were clenched tightly. Little you should ask your sister about this. Diamo Xian lowered his eyes and gazed deeply at the person in his arms. Anyone with eyes would be able to see the emotions in his eyes. Yi Fengyu was confused. Chapter 2145. Yi Fengyu's eyes widened. Ziling's eyes sparkled with tears of joy and excitement. The sect elder beside him was astonished, then he took a deep breath. Sister. Yi Fengyu came back to his senses and immediately stared at Yi Qingluo. You heard what Overlord brother-in-law said. As long as you are willing, brother-in-law will marry you immediately. What are you waiting for? Why did she feel that she was also being forced to marry? Sister, what are you waiting for? Hurry and tell brother-in-law that you are willing to marry him. Yi Fengyu saw that Yi Qingluo was still silent and hurriedly grabbed her wrist. Cough. Cough cough. Yi Qingluo was stunned by Yi Fengyu's anxious expression. She hurriedly raised her hand and patted the back of his hand. Xiaoyu, marriage is not something that can be achieved just because you say so. Sister, aren't you anxious? Yi Fengyu held Yi Qingluo's hand tightly. You and brother-in-law are? He blushed and looked away shyly. If sister has brother-in-law's child in your stomach, what should we do? Isn't it better to get married earlier and have a legitimate reason for it? You stupid child. Who taught you to say all these? How would Yi Qingluo not understand what he was referring to when he didn't say it out? Her eyes widened and raised her hand to knock on Yi Fengyu's head. There's still a child. You already make me worry enough. I don't intend to give birth to another child to make me worry. Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes. That indifferent tone made Diamo Xian's eyes suddenly turn cold. The flame around him gradually subsided. Yi Qingluo continued, Don't let your imagination run wild. Your brother-in-law and I will get married sooner or later. As for the child, it will not happen for the time being. As for you, don't worry about this kind of thing. Just take care of Three Springs sect and be my most solid support. That's enough. The low pressure created by a certain man disappeared at this moment. A certain man's face revealed a proud and joyful smile. Look, his Lil Luo said it herself that they would get married sooner or later. Sooner or later. That meant that Lil Luo agreed to marry him. Look, his Lil Luo heir said, Your brother-in-law, so naturally. It was obvious that she had long regarded him as her husband and husband. That was why she acted so naturally. A certain man was so happy that his tail was almost up to the sky. The sect elder beside him saw the change in Diamo Xian's expression. Bit by bit, the shock eroded his heart. The Overlord's love for 7th Miss. The Overlord's mood was completely influenced by Miss 7. The elders of the sect clenched their fists. He must properly assist the new sect master and not have any crooked thoughts. No matter what, they could never offend the Overlord. Alright, little you, be a good boy and follow your second brother and the elders to learn how to manage the Three Springs sect. Your brother-in-law and I will return to our courtyard to rest. Yi Qingluo raised her wrist and hooked her finger at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengyu pouted unhappily and took a step back. Sister, I'm already the sect master. You can't always be like this. Yi Qingluo nestled lazily in Diamo Xian's arms. Her little finger hooked again as she said in a sweet voice, You're the sect master. That means you're my brother. Alright, this reason was very good and powerful. He had no words to refute. Chapter 2146. Yiqing Luo's palm touched Yi Fengyu's head. She smiled complacently, like a cat who had stolen a fish, and rubbed his head fiercely. Yiqing Luo only stopped in satisfaction when she saw her brother's meticulously combed hair was messed up. "Ah Xian, let's go." Yiqing Luo retracted her hand, circled Dmo Xian's neck, and leaned her head on his shoulder. His scent filled her nostrils. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes in satisfaction. Yi Fengyu's soft grumbling was still in her ears. Looking at the scene of the siblings getting along, Dmo Xian shook his head helplessly. "Little you, study hard. As long as you can improve to the extent that your sister is satisfied, brother-in-law will give you a rare weapon." Yi Fengyu's eyes lit up. "Brother-in-law, really? Really? Will brother-in-law lie to you?" Dmo Xian responded in a rare good temper. Yi Fengyu was ecstatic and couldn't help but clap and shout. After Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo out of the hall, Yiqing Luo could still hear the burst of surprise cheers in the hall. "This child is really just a child." Yiqing Luo looked at him teasingly. "I think you can save this rare weapon. You have no confidence in him?" Dmo Xian's steps were steady to avoid shaking the person in his arms. "He wants to protect you and become your backing, then he will definitely be able to do it." Yiqing Luo used the strength of his neck to straighten her back. Her face and Dmo Xian's face were facing each other. A pair of cunning fox-like charming eyes flashed with a strange teasing light. "I say, Xian, you are the dignified overlord, noble and elegant, respected by the world, like a legendary existence. You actually spent so much effort to encourage a human with a little bit of talent in the lower realm." Yiqing Luo giggled. "Don't tell me, is it because little you called brother-in-law?" The smile on Dmo Xian's face froze. His deep inky eyes shifted away unnaturally. Yiqing Luo's smile widened, both hands held Dmo Xian's face, not letting him look away. Her bright eyes sparkled like colored glass. She smiled warmly. "I was right, wasn't I?" The man's face was forced to be unable to move away. He frowned and pursed his lips. "Stop fooling around. Aren't you tired? Go back to the room and rest." Yiqing Luo's smile was bright and beautiful as she swept a glance at the surrounding maids and servants. She threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms. "Oh, you're embarrassed?" How could Dmo Xian not see through the young lady's playful thoughts? His large palm firmly supported the girl's waist, preventing her from falling out of his arms. Before he could answer, the girl suddenly hugged his head with her hands. "So what if you're seen? Everyone in the Nirvana realm knows that you're my man." The girl's elegant voice was filled with pride. She snorted and bumped her head against his forehead. "Xian, I know that you like me so much. You always want to marry me." Dmo Xian left her forehead and held Yiqing Luo tightly. He then freed one hand to rub her forehead. "I want to marry you, are you surprised?" The man's slender fingers gently caressed her head, the place where her head bumped against his forehead. Yiqing Luo smiled. "Not surprised, I've long seen through your soul and saw your deep love for me." Chapter 2147. Their shadows were projected on the ground. The tall figure leaned over, covering the petite figure of the young lady. Their shadows overlapped as if they were glued together. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. After exchanging glances with Dmo Xian for a few breaths, she was the first to admit defeat and averted her gaze. Her little hand touched her face and found that it was boiling hot. She pursed her pink lips tightly and snorted softly. "I'm telling you, don't think of cheating marriage now." "Cheating marriage?" Dmo Xian raised his brows, leaned close to her ear and breathed out teasingly. "I really wish I could cheat you to stay by my side and not let you leave for even a moment." "Hey, you, what are you doing?" After being tormented by Dmo Xian last night, Yiqing Luo's body was extremely sensitive. Under the warm breath, her delicate body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Her slender and fair fingers unconsciously clenched the collar of his shirt. This man, exuding the male pheromones again, tempting her to commit a crime. "I'm talking to you about serious matters, don't be so frivolous." Yiqing Luo lowered her head to avoid his teasing. "I'm already in pain last night, don't even think of touching me today." Hearing that she was in pain, Dmo Xian immediately moved his thin lips away and looked at her nervously. "Is it painful? Let me take a look back in the room. If it's painful, you must apply medicine." "Take a look back in the room? Apply medicine?" Who did he learn this skill of acting like a hoodlum from? Didn't he feel ashamed to say such words? Yiqing Luo pinched Dmo Xian's waist fiercely. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll ignore you. The young lady in his arms blushed, her eyes were full of resentment, charming and charming. Diamo Xian looked at the spot where he had been squeezed 3 inches down and a flame sprang up again. He held back his thin lips and pulled a smile, bent his head close to her ear and laughed softly. Didn't you say it's painful? Why did it become me talking nonsense again? Yi Qing Luo was furious, facing a shameless man. How could she talk back? Diamo Xian carried her and strode towards Yi Qing Luo's courtyard. All right, since you're not feeling well, go back to your room and rest for a few days. The academy did not urge you, rest at home for a few days, I won't touch you. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. She leaned her head against his chest. Diamo Xian's brows were tinged with smiles as his footsteps became gentler. Lil Luo, what Xiao Yu said earlier actually makes sense. Our relationship now is no different from that of a marriage. It's better to get married as soon as possible. You're still talking. Yi Qing Luo's little head arched against his chest. Diamo Xian continued to persuade, if you have a child and we're not married yet, wouldn't it affect the child's reputation? What child? Xiao Yu is spouting nonsense over there and you are spouting nonsense too. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and stared at him. We're so close. It's only a matter of time before we have kids, isn't it? Diamo Xian halted his footsteps as he lifted her chin, his peach blossom eyes narrowed as he said unhappily, don't tell me that you've never thought about our child? Yi Qing Luo turned red. She wanted to struggle but her strength was not as good as Diamo Xian's. She could only blush as she muttered, getting married is just a formality. Between us, there's no need for the so-called formality. Didn't we agree earlier? I will wait until I'm able to keep pace with you, then I'll marry you. After saying this, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but feel puzzled. In modern times, weren't all men unwilling to get married, thinking that it was just a formality? And to a woman, the wedding was the most important thing in her life. Chapter 2148. Diamo Xian sighed helplessly, I shouldn't have agreed to you that time. Are you questioning my ability? Yi Qing Luo stared at him unhappily, her little fist clenched tightly and smashed towards his face. Diamo Xian pretended to be in pain. Yes, my little Luo, is so powerful, very soon she will be able to keep pace with me. Yi Qing Luo snorted, with a proud look of a queen, she retracted her hand, that's more like it. Diamo Xian's eyes were dark, incomparably deep as he nodded with a warm smile. At this moment, all the maids and servants who were passing by saw it. Just a moment later, the overlord doted on their 7th miss to the bone, simply a henpecked husband. This news spread throughout the entire Three Springs sect. He carried her as they stepped into the courtyard. The silence between the two of them was a little strange. The courtyard door closed. His footsteps didn't stop. Entering the bedroom, Diamo Xian placed Yi Qing Luo on the bed, pulled the blanket over and covered her up. Immediately he straightened up. Yi Qing Luo looked at the peerless face in front of her. His lips curled up into a warm smile. Between his brows was his pampering towards her. But the atmosphere between the two of them was inexplicably strange. The more Yi Qing Luo thought, the more upset she felt. Just as Diamo Xian was about to turn around to leave, she suddenly stretched out her hand and grabbed his wrist. Ah Xian. Diamo Xian's footsteps paused, his other hand stretched over and wrapped around her little hand. What's the matter? Ah Xian. The calmer he appeared, the more Yi Qing Luo was concerned. She hugged Diamo Xian's arm and pulled him to the bed. Sit down. Diamo Xian's gaze fell onto her face, gentle and sorrowful. Little Luo, aren't you still crying out in pain? If you continue to invite me like this, won't it hurt even more? Yi Qing Luo's cheeks blushed as she pinched his hand hard. Stop fooling around, sit down. Diamo Xian sat down obediently. Ah Xian, I know you're angry. Yi Qing Luo's little hand was still holding his big hand tightly. Actually, what Xiao Yu said, I have considered it for a long time. She took a deep breath, raised her head and met his gaze. It's not only you who wants to get married, I also want to be open and above board to let the entire Nirvana realm and even the upper realm know that you, Diamo Xian, belong to me, Yi Qing Luo. But the look in her eyes was complicated. You should know from Beiyuan that, not only is my father not Yi Tianquang, my mother is also not my mother. Diamo Xian didn't hide it and nodded to admit it. Tang Beiyuan was the secret guard that Diamo Xian had arranged to protect her in the dark on behalf of Wind. Tang Beiyuan must have seen everything that had happened to her in the dark. Moreover, Diamo Xian had rushed over in such a timely manner. It was probably because of Zhu Wuxin's appearance. Diamo Xian was very clear about Chu Wuxin's feelings for her. Tang Beiyuan knew that as well. Because of this, when Chu Wuxen brought the wind chimes as a gift to Yiqing Luo, as Diamo Xian's subordinate, Tang Beiyuan felt a sense of crisis for her own master. Hence, she decisively used their imperial palace's exclusive method to inform Diamo Xian about this matter. Because of this, when Diamo Xian rushed over, she could feel the scorching heat from Diamo Xian's body and the perspiration on his forehead, as well as that unstable breathing. Because of this, Yiqing Luo was certain. Tang Beiyuan must have told Diamo Xian in detail about these few days' matters in the morning when she was still sleeping. Chapter 2149. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and stared at the big hand that was held by her small hand. The fingers with distinct joints were extremely slender and beautiful. She couldn't bear to let go and kept holding it. I'm only 15 now in the place where I grew up. This age is really too young. At least, you have to wait for me for another 5 or 6 years. The current her was still considered a child. According to the education from where I came from, giving birth before the age of 23 or 4 is not only harmful to your own body, it will also harm your own baby. In another 5 or 6 years, her body would be considered as fully developed. Pregnant with Diamo Xian's child. That was health and the safety of mother and child. Alright, I'm not urging you to give birth. Diamo Xian looked at the girl's serious expression and couldn't help but laugh. Yiqing Luo grabbed his hand tightly. I'm serious, you're not allowed to laugh. Alright, I won't laugh. Diamo Xian looked like he was trying to hold back his laughter. Yiqing Luo pouted and unhappily shook off his hand. Xian, do you know my background may not be that simple. Diamo Xian's expression froze. Yiqing Luo noticed the change in his mood and smiled helplessly. Right, even you have noticed it. Yes. Diamo Xian didn't deny it. Your innate talent, your profound heart jade and the dark forces as well as godless island trying every means possible to push you into the pit. I have some guesses. When Bei Ming died he said he hid something for me, something related to my biological father. Yiqing Luo leaned into his arms. I didn't open the box. Old man Song said he sensed a very powerful force in the box. That powerful force will cause Nirvana realm to no longer be peaceful. Diamo Xian frowned. What is it? Don't know, I didn't open it. Yiqing Luo shook her head. Old man Song said that the force exceeded Nirvana realm, and even surpassed his power. As she said, she pursed her thin lips and raised her chin on his chest. Old man Song is the spirit of the Azure Dew bracelet, an old monster who has lived for thousands of years. Even he is in awe of the power. That is absolutely not a power that I can contend against. So, you didn't open the box and didn't check for any clues regarding your father? Diamo Xian's fingers gently brushed aside the stray hair on her forehead. Yiqing Luo replied with an N in a small voice. I think when my ability is strong enough, then I can go look for my father. Based on my current ability, even if I know who my father is, what can I do? There was something about her father, something so powerful. It was so strong that even old man Song had to admit defeat. This meant that his father was not someone from the Nirvana realm. The Nirvana realm was the lowest realm in the entire alternate world. That also meant that she had found clues about her father and knew who her father was. She didn't have the ability to look for her father and find out about her origins. And, about my mother. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyelids. Old ancestor said that Yi Tian Kuang wanted the thing in my mother's hands. For that thing he didn't hesitate to spend more than half of his life. That thing is very likely on me. Do you know what it is? Diamo Xian also found out about this matter from Tang Beiyuan. Chapter 2150. A clue to a powerful and unimaginable father. A person who possessed a mysterious item that made the head of the Three Springs sect, one of the 4 major sects, obsessed for most of his life, even marrying a woman he didn't love, to become the official wife of the Yi family. Whether it was a clue to his father, or a clue to his mother, it showed that both of them were extraordinary, not simple. Xian, if my father and mother were ordinary people, I am willing to marry you now. But I can't. Yiqing Luo's little hand stretched over and held one of his fingers. The softness wrapped around his finger. Diamo Xian's heart suddenly softened. Yiqing Luo raised her head, her long curly eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings. She pursed her pink lips, her cheeks slightly flushed. Xian, our relationship, our feelings actually don't need anything to prove it. Just like what I said before, marriage is just a formality. I love you just like you love me. We are a match made in heaven and are destined to be together. Otherwise, why would I come all the way from the 21st century to this strange world? I firmly believe that it is all for me, is to meet you. The young lady's voice was extremely sweet and soft. Low and soft voice as if she was shy. This look made Diamo Xian's heart palpitate. He stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. His eyes were deep and his gaze was lingering. Yiqing Luo was defeated, her little hand gripped his finger tighter and continued, Ah Xian, you are very powerful and your identity is distinguished. Diamo Xian was stunned, his thin lips moved slightly and was about to say something. A slender and soft finger pressed against his lips. And with the fragrance of a woman's hair. Ah Xian, let me finish. Yiqing Luo half knelt by the bed, her finger pressed against his lips. Soft skin rubbed against his lips. Like a feather, gently stirred Yiqing Luo's heart. Her face turned redder, not daring to look at Diamo Xian's sexy and charming face. No one knows where you come from, how powerful you are. She tried hard to say what was in her heart. You are very mysterious, mysterious island. I know you are hiding a lot of secrets. I also know that you didn't tell me because I'm not strong enough. Even if I knew everything, I wouldn't be able to help you at all. Instead, I might even be a burden to you. Therefore, in order to become a woman who is worthy of you, the Overlord, who is able to help you, the Overlord, I must choose to strengthen myself, improve myself and work hard to catch up to you. Diamo Xian's deep inky peach blossom eyes were like a pond of spring water, completely Yiqing Luo's peerlessly beautiful face. His arms tightened, hugging her tightly. Lil Luo air, I am willing to wait. Yiqing Luo's arms hugged him tightly as she buried her head on his shoulder. Ah Xian, I won't let you wait for too long. As long as I find my biological parents, if it's possible, we'll get married under the witness of my biological parents. Her eyes were full of smiles. This will definitely be very satisfactory. All right. Diamo Xian inhaled the fragrance from her body and understood what Yiqing Luo was thinking. He had heard Yiqing Luo mention about her modern life. He had no parents since he was a child. He followed the group of old men from the Yi clan and underwent inhumane torturous training. Then she arrived here. The Yi clan had hurt her deeply. To say that she didn't care about kinship, in actual fact, it was all fake. If Yiqing Luo could find her biological parents, it would mean that she had become extremely powerful. At that time, she would definitely have the ability to look down on the prosperous world with him. If she could add on the blessings of her biological parents. Using Yiqing Luo's words. Just 2 words. Chapter 2151. Yiqing Luo's face was buried in his chest. It also covered the faint melancholy between her brows. Her background was too complicated and strange. She appeared in the Yi family out of nowhere and became a descendant of the Yi family. Her mother even let her sit on the position of young matriarch until she was 15 years old. This was too abnormal. Why was it the Yi family? She still remembered that she was the young matriarch of the hidden Yi family in the 21st century. Only she could enter the Yi family's ancestral tomb. There was no doubt that she was the descendant of the Yi family. So she must have some connection with the Yi family of the Nirvana Realm's Three Springs sect. That was why she was placed in the Yi family. Behind this was her so-called biological parents' plot. Or someone else? Yiqing Luo had no way of knowing these. The only thing she knew was, her future path had to be taken step by step, steadily and slowly. Otherwise, a little carelessness might. Yiqing Luo restrained the glint in her eyes as she suppressed all her thoughts. She had to figure out her own background. Figure out the truth of that year. In this way she could be at ease and be together with Diamo Xian. This concerned the future of both of them. She could not allow any accidents to happen to the both of them. Yiqing Luo raised her head, her eyes sparkled as she gazed at Diamo Xian's face, revealing a bright smile. Ah Xian, I love you. The young lady's starry eyes were ravaged, but the warmth in her eyes was like the warm sun in early spring. Bit by bit, it seeped into Diamo Xian's heart. The arm around her waist was tightly wrapped around her slender waist. The man's hot body pressed down. Yiqing Luo's delicate body seemed to be ignited. The man's low and sexy voice was still beside her ear, teasing her little heart bit by bit. Her delicate body trembled slightly as her little hand grabbed Diamo Xian's collar and pushed him away. Stop, Ah Xian, don't be so touched that you want to express your excitement by touching me. Diamo Xian's kiss was about to fall, but was blocked by Yiqing Luo's hand. He didn't move his lips away. The warm thin lips were imprinted on her fair palm. His lips curled slightly. His thin lips rubbed against her palm, causing Yiqing Luo's hand to tremble slightly. Instinctively he wanted to retract his hand. Diamo Xian's large palm suddenly grasped her little hand, preventing her from escaping. Diamo Xian. Yiqing Luo bit her lips shyly as she growled his name. This man, if he continued to flirt like this, something bad would really happen. She was not a woman who could be flirted with. It was getting to his head. She didn't care about anything else and directly pounced on him. Diamo Xian's lips were still attached to her palm. When he heard her voice, he looked up. Yiqing Luo was looking at him from this angle. She just met his eyes. Her body couldn't help but feel numb and her legs couldn't help but go soft. That pair of bewitching peach blossom eyes were devilishly seductive. It was as if he was tempting her to sink into his demonic charm. Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red in an instant. Diamo Xian delightfully curled his thin lips as he teased, "Is Lil Luo shy?" Yiqing Luo stared at him resentfully. He was so seductive, it would be strange if she wasn't shy. If she didn't feel shy, he should be panicking. Hearing the teasing tone in Diamo Xian's words, Yiqing Luo expressed that she couldn't continue to flirt with Diamo Xian like this. That part was really in pain from Diamo Xian's torment last night. She couldn't withstand the seduction from his beauty. If she went into battle with an injury and saw blood, that would be terrible. Young people must control themselves. Yiqing Luo brainwashed herself in various ways in her mind. Chapter 2152. An envelope appeared in Yiqing Luo's hands. Yiqing Luo pushed Diamo Xian away as she shifted her two little legs backwards. Diamo Xian only swept a glance at that envelope as he didn't put it to heart. Looking at the distance between the young lady and himself, there was more than half a bed's distance. His rosy red thin lips curled upwards as his gaze filled with adoration fell onto Yiqing Luo. "Lil Luo, you're not feeling well, so I won't touch you now." Diamo Xian bent over slightly as he tried to fish the young lady out from the bed. Yiqing Luo slapped his hand away. "Don't come over, sit there and don't move." Diamo Xian helplessly retracted his hand as he coaxed warmly, all right, I won't go over and I'll listen to you." "But, Lil Luo, isn't that area hurting? Let me take a look first. If it's really painful, then I'll apply medicine." He only thought that Yiqing Luo was in pain because of last night's torment, hence she wasn't willing to be intimate with him today. You still dare to say?" Yiqing Luo had just opened the envelope when her cheeks flushed red from Diamo Xian's words. "Don't say any more. Don't you know what shame is?" Diamo Xian's smile became even more devilish. "There's only the two of us here, what's there to be shy about? Moreover, which part of your body have I not seen before?" Diamo Xian. Yiqing Luo flew into a rage out of embarrassment as her wide-opened eyes started to burn with sparks. She clenched her teeth as she pounced towards Diamo Xian's direction. Her two little fists were clenched tightly. Rushing up, she punched Diamo Xian's exceptionally handsome face, which was filled with teasing smiles. Her hand had just waved and a piece of yellowish paper floated down from the envelope. That piece of paper was extremely thin. It was obviously yellowish, but it gave off a strange energy. When Diamo Xian's eyes looked towards the paper, the teasing smile on his face instantly froze on his face. "This is..." Diamo Xian held onto Yiqing Luo's hands, which were waving over as he used a little strength to bring her into his embrace. Following that, the other hand picked up the thin piece of paper. "This thing, where did you get it from?" Lying in Diamo Xian's embrace, Yiqing Luo could obviously feel that Diamo Xian's aura had turned solemn. Obviously he knew this kind of paper and had seen it before. Realizing this, Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up obviously. She happily climbed out of his arms. "Xian, do you know this kind of paper? Do you know which realm this thing came from?" Diamo Xian's fingers gently stroked the paper, and the more he touched, the more grave his expression became. "This thing definitely doesn't exist in the lower realm." He didn't directly answer Yiqing Luo's question, but indirectly admitted that this piece of paper indeed came from another plane. Yiqing Luo didn't pursue further. She struggled free from Diamo Xian's embrace and knelt on the bed, slowly spreading out the paper. It looked like a thin piece of paper. When it was spread out, it occupied half the bed. This paper. Wasn't it the map which Yiqing Luo had found in the secret compartment in her mother's room? "I think Yi Tianquang probably wants to obtain this map from my mother." Yiqing Luo's hands were propped up by the side of the map, as she stared at the densely packed complicated routes on it. When the map was completely unfolded, Diamo Xian's body stiffened. He stared at the dazzling map in a daze. It wasn't until he heard Yiqing Luo's voice that he regained his senses. Chapter 2153. Yiqing Luo nodded. Yes, this is what my mother left for me, but the route on it is too complicated. Even after such a long time, I can only remember half of the route in my mind. Pausing her words, she raised her eyes in puzzlement and stared at DMO Xian. You know what this map is and where it came from, right? DMO Xian's gaze retracted from the map little by little. His breathing was still faintly uneven. Obviously his heart was not calm. Little Luo, keep it first, he said with a complicated expression. Yiqing Luo frowned. DMO Xian's expression, why did it look so strange? Keep it first. DMO Xian rubbed her head. Oh. Yiqing Luo used her peripheral vision to look at the expression on DMO Xian's face as she refolded the map. She put the map back into the profound phoenix ring. She immediately climbed to DMO Xian's side and leaned her head on his shoulder. I'll keep it. DMO Xian lowered his eyes. His long eyelashes cast an arc under his eyelids. The expression on his face was unprecedentedly dignified. Yiqing Luo didn't rush him, quietly nestled in his arms. She knew that this map must be hiding a huge secret. And it was absolutely the thing that Yi Tianquang wanted to get from her mother. A map that didn't belong to Nirvana realm. The map that Yi Tianquang racked his brains to get. And let DMO Xian. Such a heavy map. DMO Xian needed a short period of time to sort out his feelings when he saw this map in the lower realm. The silent time passed by in a flash. After a stick of incense, DMO Xian's tense body finally moved. Yiqing Luo leaned in his arms and felt it most clearly. She immediately straightened her body, gently fanned her long eyelashes and looked at him quietly. Little Luo, this map is called Profound Flame W Chart. DMO Xian's voice was somewhat tense and his tone was extremely flat. Profound Flame W Chart? This? What kind of name was this? But it sounded like it was very powerful. You must keep this map well. You must not expose it to anyone. Otherwise, not only will the Nirvana realm be in trouble, I'm afraid the entire alternate world will fall into an endless battle. DMO Xian said as he shut his eyes wearily. The profound flame W diagram was with Yiqing Luo. Should he rejoice or worry? His tall figure leaned against the headboard. His slender fingers stroked the sore spot between his eyebrows. Your mother should have told you about the importance of the arcane flame W diagram. He sighed lightly. DMO Xian's look made Yiqing Luo's heart feel perturbed and uneasy. She leaned towards DMO Xian's side and her charming eyes looked at his face without blinking. When I got this map, my mother had already passed away. DMO Xian's eyelids twitched. Old man Song has never seen this map before, so he doesn't know where the route is drawn on the map. Yiqing Luo continued. DMO Xian abruptly opened his eyes. Yes. That old man, call him out. Xian, what's the secret of this map? Tell me first. This map is likely to be related to my life experience. Yiqing Luo held DMO Xian's arm. She always felt that DMO Xian didn't want to talk to her about the profound flame W chart. Chapter 2154. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and finally nodded in compromise. She placed her palm on the azure dew bracelet and activated her divine sense. Last Luo, you and DMO Xian are like glue. Why did you call this old man out to join in the fun? Old man Song's spiritual body floated out of the azure dew bracelet. You two youngsters are so sticky. Do you want this old man to see you two lovey-dovey? Are you sure you can continue to be so intimate with this old man? Old man Song had obviously just woken up as he lazily yawned, when his entire spiritual body floated out of the azure dew bracelet. Only then did he realize. The atmosphere between the two of them, who were originally stuck together, was a little strange. Old man Song looked at DMO Xian, who was sitting on the bed with a grave expression. Then he looked at Yiqing Luo, who was sitting on the other side, staring at DMO Xian without blinking. He looked left and right. He suddenly clapped his hands. You two, don't tell me you two are quarreling and looking for this old man to mediate? After he finished, he floated one round around the two. These two people were so sticky when they met. They couldn't wait to become conjoined twins. Since yesterday when DMO Xian appeared, Old Man Song decisively blocked the azure dew bracelet from the outside world. He didn't expect that in just one day something happened. He shook his head and lectured, you two don't? The map in little Luo's hand is the profound flame W diagram. DMO Xian opened his mouth lightly, interrupting Old Man Song's lecture. Young couple fighting in bed. Old man Song's floating spiritual body suddenly rushed in front of DMO Xian. What did you say? Profound flame W diagram? DMO Xian calmly nodded. Old man Song's mouth opened wide, his face full of disbelief. After a long while he recovered from the shock and turned to look at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo blinked and nodded uncertainly. That map. Xian said it is the profound flame W diagram, but... This W diagram, what is it? Old man Song's pale lips trembled. His white beard fluttered along with his breathing. Then his eyes met with DMO Xian's. The room fell into silence again. Yiqing Luo looked at the man in the spiritual body as her pretty face instantly turned stiff. What kind of riddle are the two of you playing? Is there anything that you can't tell me? Arousing my curiosity but not telling me, that's the same as arousing my curiosity but not. Lil Luo, DMO Xian stretched out his long arm and pulled Yiqing Luo into his embrace. A broad and thick palm covered Yiqing Luo's lips, preventing her from saying those shocking words in front of Old Man Song. In any case, Old Man Song was also an elder. DMO Xian held her in his arms. He lowered his eyes. Against the light, his eyes were as deep as the sea, making it difficult to see through him. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and pouted unhappily. Both of you know what the Tianshu map is except for me. Lil Luo, it's not that we don't want to tell you, but it's the safest for you if you don't know, do you understand? DMO Xian's palm slightly exerted force as he hugged her head into his embrace. His lower jaw was pressed against her head, his voice was low and hoarse. That thing could easily bring about a fatal disaster. I don't want anything to happen to you. Fatal disaster. These 4 words struck Yiqing Luo's heart. She remembered that when she saw her mother's letter, her mother had reminded her. Never ever let others know about this map, otherwise it would bring about a fatal disaster. Looking at Yiqing Luo's dazed and silent look. Chapter 2155. Lil Luo, let me put it this way. DMO Xian looked at her sternly. With this map, compared to you with the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, you are more tempting. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as she squinted. She naturally understood that the arousal in DMO Xian's words was not referring to the arousal between a man and a woman. Instead, he was tempted by his prey. Yes, prey. Previously, when he found out that the Profound Heart Jade in her body was the only one in the world, the heaven-defying Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. She knew it. If the news that the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade was in her body were to spread, she was everyone's prey. It wasn't just the Nirvana realm that would come to hunt her down. Even the people from other realms, even the people from the upper realm would hunt her. Now she heard what DMO Xian said. This map, known as the Mystic Flames W diagram, was even more important than the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. From this, it could be seen how great the secret hidden on the map was. Just like what DMO Xian had said. She did not know the details of this map. Only then would it be safer. Lil Luo. DMO Xian lowered his head to look at the dazed young lady. The shock and astonishment on her face clearly showed that she really didn't know what the Arcane Flames W diagram was. Yiqing Luo looked at him blankly when she heard his voice. DMO Xian glanced at Old Man Song who was floating at the side. He had not completely recovered from the news of the W diagram. His eyes were empty and lifeless as he stared ahead in a daze. DMO Xian retracted his gaze, his peach blossom eyes were deep and reserved. His gaze locked onto Yiqing Luo. The 2 large palms that were holding onto her arms slowly tightened their grip. Xian. Yiqing Luo's arm was hurting from the pinching as she called out to him softly. Ever since she took out the W diagram, DMO Xian became very strange. He didn't just know what the W diagram was. Furthermore, it was highly possible that there was some unspeakable secret between it and the W diagram. Little Luo, listen to me. DMO Xian suddenly pulled her into his embrace. His long body enveloped Yiqing Luo tightly. Yiqing Luo's face crashed into his solid chest. She was in so much pain that she wanted to raise her hand to rub her face. Before he could voice out his complaints, her waist was immediately held by the man's large palm. She buried herself even deeper into his embrace. The rich scent of sandalwood and the scent of male hormones filled the air. Yiqing Luo found it hard to breathe. He wanted to struggle. But the man seemed to be able to predict her next move. He could always trap her hands before she wanted to struggle. Yiqing Luo simply gave up on struggling and turned her little face to another direction in his arms. What was wrong with this man? She was about to be suffocated by him. Yiqing Luo was still adjusting her breathing position. Suddenly, her body was abruptly pulled a distance away from the man. Diamo Xian lowered his head and stared into her dazed eyes, as though he had mustered up a huge amount of courage. He said word by word, "Haven't you always wanted to know why I am in Nirvana realm?" His voice was very low and his breathing was a little heavy. Yiqing Luo's heart was lifted. In that instant, the confusion he had felt just now was answered. "You're here for the Dubhe diagram?" Yiqing Luo looked at Diamo Xian in a daze as she voiced out her guess. The arms around her waist tightened even more, as though she was afraid that he would escape because of this. His arms were like an iron wall, trapping her in his embrace. Chapter 2156. F***K. It was really any melodramatic. Yiqing Luo's heart was racing with 10,000 curses. She didn't speak. Diamo Xian panicked. The overlord who had always been noble and elegant, towering above thousands of people, was revered by everyone. Right now his face was flustered. His eyes revealed a trace of cautiousness and fawning. He seemed to be in a very low mood. He lowered his head and pillowed on her neck, not daring to look at her eyes. "After knowing my motive, you don't want to talk to me anymore? Hate me?" His voice was very soft. She could tell that he was extremely upset. Yiqing Luo's pupils gradually focused. Just as she was about to speak, the man helplessly opened his mouth again, his voice lowered a little, adding a trace of disappointment. "Lil Luo, don't keep quiet. I know to you, this may indicate betrayal, but..." Wait. Yiqing Luo raised her hand, interrupting his words. Two little hands propped on Diamo Xian's chest, pushing him. "Diamo Xian, what are you talking about?" Hearing the young lady's response, Diamo Xian instinctively let go of her. Yiqing Luo got off the bed and took a few steps back. Then she raised her head to look at him. She discovered that the man's usual high-spirited, confident eyes, as though everything was in the palm of his hand, was exceptionally clear. He only looked at her attentively. His eyes revealed pain. Yiqing Luo's heart couldn't help but soften. Since when did her man lose so much confidence in her? To prevent the man's imagination from running wild again, Yiqing Luo could only walk to the bedside. Both her hands cupped Diamo Xian's face, met his gaze and asked seriously, "Diamo Xian, I only have one question for you." Diamo Xian looked straight at her determined eyes. "Before this, did you know that the Tianshu map was on me?" Yiqing Luo spoke slowly, extremely clearly. That frustrated man, whose face was filled with nervousness and disappointment, shook his head blankly. "No." "Then that's it." Yiqing Luo pinched his cheek. "Your motive in Nirvana realm is to search for the Tianshu map, but before I took it out you didn't know that the Tianshu map was on me. Then you wanting the Tianshu map, liking me and being together with me has nothing to do with it. How could this possibly indicate betrayal?" The young girl's sweet voice was soft and gentle. The young girl's soft and tender fingers touched his cheek. Just a light touch was enough to move his heart. "Moreover, the person who wants the heavenly pivot map, if it's you, I can give it to you." Yiqing Luo's arms hugged his neck as she pressed her petite body onto his. Diamo Xian's heart soared. The young girl's words made his heart so happy that he was about to ascend to the heavens. His little Luo heir was indeed different from ordinary girls. She knew that his goal was the Dubhe map, but she still chose to trust him. She clearly knew the importance of the Dubhe map. Furthermore, the Dubhe map was related to her mother, yet she was willing to give it to him. He was already secretly rejoicing. Fortunately, he came to the Nirvana realm to find the Dubhe diagram. He was looking for the Dubhe diagram. Only then did he have the chance to meet his Lil Luo. In this life, to have Lil Luo, he was so lucky. "Did you forget what I just said?" Diamo Xian pinched her delicate nose. "The Dubhe diagram is more important than the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, yet you still gave it away so easily? You personally came to the Nirvana realm to find the Dubhe diagram, which is enough to prove the importance of the Dubhe diagram to you." Yiqing Luo looked at him seriously. "To me, nothing is more important than you." The Dubhe diagram was indeed important. It was something that her mother had left for her. Perhaps it was related to the clues of her mother. But if Diamo Xian needed the Dubhe diagram. Chapter 2157. The young lady's serious words were filled with affection. That sweet and soft voice entered Diamo Xian's ears one by one. It almost filled his heart with honey. "You silly girl. Diamo Xian tightened his arms and pulled her into his embrace. Keep the Dubhe map well, don't take it out easily, understand? Yiqing Luo raised her head and placed her chin on his chest. I'm serious, and the Dubhe map is safer with you than with me. My previous goal was indeed to find the Dubhe map. Diamo Xian smiled, his slender fingers touched her pink lips. But now, my goal is to protect you who owns the Dubhe map. Yiqing Luo was puzzled. Knowing that the Dubhe map is with you, I don't need to specially look for it. Diamo Xian bent down and kissed her lips. Since your mother left the Dubhe map to you, it means that this Dubhe map belongs to you and only you can use it properly. Yiqing Luo pushed him. Old Man Song was still watching by the side. Diamo Xian suddenly turned serious. Lil Luo, it's not that I don't want to tell you about the Dubhe map. If the time is right, I will tell you the secret of the Dubhe map and the reason why I need it. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, with a smile on her face. It was a devastatingly beautiful sight. Her hands pinched his face again. I know, I will work hard to cultivate and grow. Alright, stop being so lovey-dovey, you two. Old Man Song, who was in the background, couldn't bear it anymore. I'm still watching, you two are kissing and hugging, do you still treat me as an elder? Yiqing Luo hooked Diamo Xian's neck and turned to look at Old Man Song, who was floating above the gauze curtain. Dang, I'm expressing to Old Man Song that we are very loving, don't worry. Old Man Song's white ball and the gauze curtain had almost blended together. He rolled his eyes at Yiqing Luo. His spiritual body floated down and pushed Yiqing Luo out of Diamo Xian's embrace. Look at your red face, go stand at the door and enjoy the wind, you're a lady, be more reserved. Yiqing Luo, why was her face so red that she didn't look reserved anymore? But she did not refute. She took a deep breath and accepted the excuse Old Man Song gave her. She patted her clothes, held her sore waist and waved her hand. Fine. I'll stand at the door to enjoy the breeze and suppress the fire in my heart. She blew a kiss at Diamo Xian and walked out of the bedroom, closing the door behind her. She left decisively. Naturally, she understood. Old Man Song and Diamo Xian had something to say. Moreover, it was about the Dubhe diagram. Old Man Song was her artifact spirit. Although he could appear in his spiritual form, he couldn't be too far away from her. All she could do was stand at the door and let the old man and the young man chat slowly. Yiqing Luo didn't eavesdrop. She really wanted to know the secret of the Dubhe diagram. But Diamo Xian's words made a lot of sense. Knowing now would do her no good. From Diamo Xian's and Old Man Song's expressions, she could tell the importance of the Tianshu map. For this thing, Yi Tianquang had sacrificed his position as the first wife, and spent most of his life grinding, enduring, and begging. For this thing, the noble and elegant overlord stayed in the Nirvana realm for so many years, and even built the imperial palace. Indeed, it was more important than the divine phoenix profound heart jade. This kind of thing was beyond her ability to bear. Chapter 2158. Their conversation didn't take too long. Before the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the room's door opened with a squeak. Yiqing Luo heard that and looked behind her. What she saw was a purple flowing light flashing past her eyes. The next moment, her waist was tightened. The man's wide and thick palms held her slender waist in his palms. Ah Xian, done talking? Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose as she leaned into his arms. Diamo Xian held her into the room and closed the door. And remember to keep the Tianshu map well, Old Man Song will remind you. I know. The two entered the room and Old Man Song had already sneaked into the azure dew bracelet, leaving the two of them alone. Oh yes, there's also this calming pearl. Yiqing Luo took out the calming pearl. I let Old Man Song take a look. There's no other presents left on the calming pearl, take another look. Yiqing Luo placed the calming pearl in Diamo Xian's hand. There was once when the dark forces made use of her profound jade heart. Yiqing Luo indicated that she had to be careful at all times. After all, the calming pearl was something that suppressed her profound jade heart. She absolutely couldn't let any external factors cause her to be controlled by the dark forces to happen again. Diamo Xian held Yiqing Luo's little hand as his palm covered her palm. Her palm felt scorching hot. Yiqing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly as she wanted to withdraw her hand. A man's low voice came into her ear, "Don't move." She didn't move again. A warm current came from the place where their palms were touching. It was Diamo Xian who released his profound qi. Yiqing Luo quietly held her breath. The distance between the two was very close. The feeling of his breath on her body was extremely clear. She blinked her eyes as her gaze moved up and down Diamo Xian's body. She could see Dmo Xian's dense and long eyelashes that were even more attractive than her own. That peerless face indeed had the capital to make people go crazy for it. Yiqing Luo's eyes stared at his face without blinking. How could Dmo Xian, with his strong perception, not feel it? Moreover, that gaze really made him have an uncontrollable impulse. Dmo Xian glanced sideways and just happened to meet with Yiqing Luo's pair of infatuated eyes. Their eyes met. Her eyes were bright and her gaze was scorching. Just by looking into each other's eyes, Zhang Xian felt as though he had been electrocuted, and the sensation coursed through his entire body. This man was truly a monster. Yiqing Luo bit her lower lip as she avoided his line of sight. There's no problem with this tranquility pearl. Dmo Xian's tone was filled with a pampering smile. Yiqing Luo's face turned even redder. She struggled her hand out from Dmo Xian's palm. The little body fell onto the bed. Lifting up her 2 little feet, she stepped on Dmo Xian's chest. No problem, then I have no problem. Now this empress wants to rest, little Xuanzi can rest. Dmo Xian just stood up. He was kicked by Yiqing Luo's 2 little feet. He reached out with his large palm and grabbed her foot. Yiqing Luo exerted a little strength and kicked him twice. Little Xuanzi, you dare to grab my leg. The moment she kicked him, her body froze and her little face turned slightly pale. She gave a hiss as she sucked in a breath of cold air, wanting to cry but no tears came out as she held onto her waist. Ioyo, my waist is so sore. Just moving her 4 limbs slightly, her entire body felt a kind of sore and numb feeling. Especially the 2 sides of her legs, as though they were chopped off and then sewn back together. Soft, painful and sore. Chapter 2159. Alright, lie down and have a good rest. Dmo Xian held her little feet in his palm when he saw her crying out in pain. Squeezing her feet, Dmo Xian was about to let go and cover Yiqing Luo with the blanket. His body had just bent down. His chest was hammered again. Dmo Xian didn't manage to react in time as his chest felt stuffy and he coughed violently. Hee. Little Xian, who asked you to bully me, I'll kick you to death. Accompanying Dmo Xian's coughing sound, Yiqing Luo's joyful laughter was heard. Yiqing Luo's little feet kicked Dmo Xian's chest harshly. After that, she quickly wanted to retract her feet. But the man's reaction was faster. Before he could retract his foot, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Her feet were locked tightly by Dmo Xian's hand. There was a strange atmosphere in the air. Yiqing Luo's body stiffened as her laughter stopped. She bent down and took a careful look at Dmo Xian. Her little feet moved and her voice became softer. Dmo Xian, you? Let go of me. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled upwards as his narrow peach blossom eyes shone with an extremely bright and scorching light. That light was enough to ignite everything. He bent down slightly as his large palm was still wrapped around her 2 little feet. Yiqing Luo bit her lower lip as her heart pounded. The temperature on her body started to rise under his gaze. Little Luo, if you continue to tempt me, I can't guarantee that I can still control myself. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes were half squinted as his deep voice was hoarse, revealing an obvious emotion. That voice was like a soft feather, tickling her heart bit by bit. Tickling her heart. Dmo Xian gazed deeply at the young lady on the bed whose face was flushed red. That creamy complexion was flushed with a bashful crimson red. That pair of clear and charming eyes were like silk, emitting a charming glow. The more he looked, the more his heart contracted. His long body couldn't help but tensed up. He suppressed his impulse and restrained his desire as he grabbed her feet and placed it at the side of his lips as he planted a fierce kiss. Yiqing Luo's petite body shook as though she was electrocuted. Her face was burning hot, so hot that it could almost cook an egg. He, the overlord, actually kissed her feet. Aren't you afraid of losing face if this spreads out? Yiqing Luo was embarrassed and annoyed, but she also knew that she and Dmo Xian were not on the same level, and totally not his opponent. She buried her face in the bed. Go and do your work. I'm going to sleep. Dmo Xian tightened his grip on her leg and a low husky laugh came from the depths of his throat. This smile simply made Yiqing Luo's amorous heart flutter. She blushed and kicked him. Dmo Xian touched the sole of her foot. Have a good rest. If you're still not feeling well tomorrow, then postpone reporting to the academy for a few days. Yiqing Luo ignored him. I'll be back soon. Miss me? Dmo Xian said again. Yiqing Luo twisted her little body, still ignoring him. His foot, which was being grabbed, gradually loosened. The atmosphere in the room was calm and quiet. Yiqing Luo laid on the ground for a long while and really didn't hear the man's voice. Biting her lip, she got up unhappily and looked behind her. His heart was filled with a sense of loss. Her petite body was suddenly hugged tightly. A gentle yet domineering kiss landed on her lips. The thick scent of a man's sandalwood filled her nostrils. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened, filled with astonishment. Chapter 2160. He didn't leave. Yiqing Luo's heart was instantly covered with sweetness. This man's skill in picking up girls was really full points. Different tricks could bring her different surprises and sweetness. This kiss lasted until both of them were out of breath. Only then did they let go. Yiqing Luo's face was flushed red as she fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Dmo Xian gently stroked her hair. His slender fingers were extremely gentle, revealing a strong sense of love. "Little Luo, protect yourself, don't force yourself." Dmo Xian whispered in her ear, "In a few days I will send Xian over, let him and Bei Yuan be your secret guards." Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and panted slightly. "Xian? Is he Bei Yuan's fiancé?" "Yes." Dmo Xian kissed her forehead. "Remember my words, no matter if it's the profound heart jade or the Tianshu map, it can only be a secret. If there's anything you can't solve, tell me through the profound phoenix ring." Yiqing Luo nodded obediently. Her little head rubbed against his arms. "You have to be careful too. After the matter is settled, let's go to the upper realm together." The hands around her waist suddenly tightened. Yiqing Luo clearly felt that the man's chest had hardened a little. She raised her head and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Just now outside the door, I also thought that Nirvana realm can no longer satisfy my growth. I think I should go to the upper realm, grow along the way, and at the same time search for clues about my parents." Although Yiqing Luo wasn't clear about the clues about her father and the Tianshu map, but she knew these two things must have come from the upper realm. Her background could only be revealed when she went to the upper realm. More importantly, her aim was to grow. To go to a more powerful place, to recultivate, to learn and grow. There was no longer any existence in Nirvana realm that could trigger her advancement. Dmo Xian released her waist and slightly opened up the distance between them, lowered his head and touched her forehead. "Okay, I'll accompany you." Yiqing Luo smiled. Something warm and soft brushed past her forehead. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. In that instant, the warmth that had surrounded her dissipated. Her fingers scratched unconsciously. She could only grab onto one hand, the air that was still lingering with the man's sandalwood scent. He left. He only stayed for a day before leaving. Although he knew very well in his heart, Dmo Xian had actually found out about Zhu Wu Xian's appearance and specially rushed over to eliminate his love rival. It wasn't that the matter of the imperial palace had been resolved. But seeing him leave in such a hurry, she couldn't help but sigh. In her heart, she was still very reluctant. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and pressed on her own heart. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes and fell onto the bed. She actually knew that the reason why Dmo Xian was in a hurry to leave was not just because of the imperial palace, but because, Dubhe diagram. The reason why Dmo Xian was in the Nirvana realm was to search for the Heaven's Pivot map. Now, the Dubhe diagram was with her. Regarding the Dubhe map, it was time to give Dmo Xian some time to sort it out. This Dubhe diagram. No matter if it was for her mother, or for her to be able to prove her true identity in the future, or for Dmo Xian, she had to keep it well. The Dubhe diagram descended. The world would definitely be in chaos. It seemed like it was for the secret she had. She had to grow up as soon as possible. Chapter 2161. In the dense forest of the high mountains, the trees were shaking and the leaves were rustling. Occasionally there were birds and beasts, cutting through the dense forest, sprinkling a strange light. At the top of the mountain, a tall figure stood on the edge of the peak, facing the wind with his hands behind his back. The luxurious purple robe, like rolling purple flowing light, was fluttering with the biting cold wind. But, no matter how strong the wind around, that figure was already standing there majestically. After a long while, a calm, weather-beaten voice, as if it had experienced the vicissitudes of life, leisurely rippled on the mountain. "Boy of the D family. What wind actually blew you here?" That tall figure still stood against the wind as if he did not hear this sentence. Then, on the mountain, a hurricane suddenly rose. Ring after ring of Xian waves, like ripples, spread out in the air one after another. The sand and stones on the ground under this hurricane rolled into a tornado. Even the huge stones on the side were blown away. That tall figure stood steadily on the edge of the mountain. If there were others at this time, they would definitely have a heart attack by this thrilling scene in front of them. "Oh, haven't seen for many years, the profound grade has improved again." That voice sounded again. Along with the sound, that rolling tornado like a huge spider web rushed to the edge of the mountain, turned into a raging wind. That figure had no time to react. He was completely swallowed by the tornado. Above the mountain, laughter resounded. But the laughter had not been vented to the fullest. Suddenly the mountain shook violently. Only to see the place where the tornado hit was broken by a powerful momentum. A purple figure flew out from the hurricane. With a wave of his sleeve, a ray of purple light flew out and turned into a sharp blade. In an instant the entire mountain was flattened. Not far away, a small thatched house was instantly pierced by the sharp blade. But in a flash the thatched house became thatch, and it was broken into pieces of thatch. "Boy of the D family, you've gone too far." Looking at his thatched house become like this, that voice was exasperated. Then, not knowing from which direction, a figure sprang out. That voice scurried out and struck a palm towards Dmo Xian. "If you waste any more time, this lord will raze this mountain of yours to the ground." Dmo Xian turned around and placed his hands behind his back, looking at the incoming palm strike with a calm expression. Just as the palm wind was about to hit Dmo Xian, the momentum of the palm suddenly stopped. Dmo Xian looked at the person in front of him indifferently. The person in front of him was dressed in an elegant moon-white robe, which made her delicate and soft body look exquisite and curvaceous. He was right. It was a woman. Furthermore, it was an extremely stunning woman. That kind of beauty was extremely flamboyant. Coupled with her temperament, there was no sense of disharmony in her beauty. He was aggressive and domineering. Dmo Xian's gaze was fixed on the woman's face for several breaths. "This lord is here because I have something to ask you. You destroyed my house the moment you arrived, and you even wanted to raze my territory to the ground. Now you want to ask me a question? How shameless." The woman rolled her eyes at him without any hesitation. Dmo Xian's eyes were gloomy as he stared at the woman and said word by word, "This lord has found the Dubhe map." The expression on the woman's face gradually stiffened. After a long while she asked, "Where is it?" "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.